years. But then I got blown up in Iraq, lost both my legs above the knee, degloving wound to my dominant right hand. There's an entrance wound on the base of my elbow,
Okay.
and then so the uh, the piece of shrapnel it entered. I was on a handle, but yeah, our truck going about 55 miles an hour down the road, being cut in half, like it like a laser beam. The front of our truck actually kept sliding down the road, and then the body of our truck that we were in actually went off the road into a dirt field. Like, that's why when I got blown up in Iraq, I never hated the guy. I never thought he was my enemy.
Really?
Yeah, he detonated the roadside bomb because of his situations, but I mean, I can't say I wouldn't have taken that risk to support my family. So,
Thanks very much for sitting down with me, Chris. I appreciate you having me in your home and everything. It's very nice of you.
appreciate you showing up, man. I really do.
Can you tell me a bit about? We'll go back to the beginning. Can you tell me a bit about where you grew up?
Um, yeah, well, I born in South Carolina, still maintain some of that southern, delicacy and southern charm. But moved to New York really young. Moved upstate originally, first to Yonkers in the Bronx, and then upstate, and then Long Island.
Okay.
But then in ninth grade, I had the opportunity to go to a private military boarding school upstate New York. So I spent my high school time in Cornwall and Hudson upstate.
Okay.
And after that, when I came back, I went away to Albany for a year, for SUNY Albany.
Right.
But then decided to join the Army, and then was stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana for 4 years. And during that time was deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq.
Okay.
So I came back to Long Island when I was like, 26, 27.
Okay.
So there's like a good 10-year gap
Right.
between living on Long Island but always coming home to Long Island.
I see. Okay, so when you were you said you went to like a military high school. How did it come about that you ended up there?
Well, in the last few years of elementary school and middle school, I would get in trouble a lot, but not for malicious things. I'd always get in trouble for, if somebody was getting picked on by a bully, like I'd always jump in the middle of the fight.
Okay.
Because most of the time, like I was friends with the kid, so like
Right.
I like a lot of geeky, nerdy interests that I've liked since I was a kid. I just always been able to tag in if they were ever getting messed on by
Right, okay.
bullies and stuff. So eventually, my parents were like, "Look, if you keep getting in trouble, we might send you to military school." And I was like, "All right, well, do we have any options? Or are there tours? Or there are pamphlets? Do I have to do any reading material?"
Right.
And they were like, "Oh, if you're interested, then we'll definitely look into it." And it became something that was offered me by my family, which I really appreciated.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Sorry. So you went from living on Long Island to moving to a military like school upstate. Was it like a boarding one?
It
I
was a
assume?
boarding school, so I was home mostly 2 months during the summer, but because boarding school's schedule it doesn't overlap with the public school schedule, like I'd always be home 2.5 weeks by myself when everybody else is still in school. Then I'd leave like 2.5 weeks before everybody else, had to go back. So they were still in the midst of summer vacation.
You were a bit out of sync. Yeah.
So, but like and then every now and then being able to come home for like a week or 2 weeks throughout the year. But yeah, most of the time spent like 8 months of the year there.
Right. Okay. So like in a military high school, is it just like a normal high school, and do you also
Well,
learn military stuff?
All right. So since it's a boarding school and since it's a military school, it's cadet cadre led. So the student body is responsible for maintaining military discipline within the Corps of Cadets. So there's no civilian clothing because we don't. Some people could afford really nice clothes, and some people might not be able to afford the nicer things, and we don't want any kind of distinction that isn't the natural,
I see.
talents of the student or the cadet. So there's everybody gets the same opportunity. That everybody's in uniform, everybody is gone through the same cadet training in the beginning of the year, and you're given opportunities to be able to conform and be able to, excel in the environment.
Okay.
Or if there are issues, it's normally not that the person doesn't want to do well, it's that they have other issues.
Oh.
So then those other issues are able to be examined and defined a lot easier when you're living with the people that you're going to school with, you know?
I see. I see.
Um,
Um. Okay. So, would it be the intention of most people in that type of high school to go on and serve later on?
No.
Really?
Yeah, it's very rare because most of the time people don't get threatened with military school and then like want to go. I don't think normally it's like if they go for a year and do well, then they don't have to come back.
Okay,
So
okay.
that like most people there are like, yeah, I'll be game. I'm game. I'll do the military cadet cadre stuff. I'll be in study hall when I'm supposed to. I won't get demerits. Most people just want to prove that they can be regular students and not get in trouble, so that they can get back into their public school, life.
Okay, interesting.
A few people there, did choose to go obviously with military aspirations, but
Right. I assume you did your whole high schooling years there, yeah.
yes, 9th through 12th.
Okay. So was it a case that like you kind of clicked with the place? You kind of enjoyed it to some degree. Maybe not enjoyed it.
From before I even went, I knew that I wanted to be in the high school, the military high school,
Really?
until graduation. So, it's kind of a corny story, but when we first were doing a tour of New York Military Academy, it happened to be on Mother's Day, and they had a Mother's Day parade, and my mother was there, and she got to see the high school seniors that were officers be able to stand in front of the formation and present their mothers with individual roses during the parade.
Huh.
And without knowing what a senior officer was at the time, or knowing the distinction of even how to get there, my mother, when she saw that, she of course was like, "Oh my God, I'd be so thrilled if you presented me with a flower on Mother's Day." So I was like, "Okay, fine, I'm doing it." Like I was already committed to being there as a senior.
Okay.
And being an officer. Like I hadn't even gone to the first day of cadet cadre yet,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
cadet training yet. So like my aspirations were to stay there for the 4 years.
Fair enough. Do you learn any aspect of military?
Yes, and
Anything
it
in there?
really is. It's up to the cadet how much of the military they actually want to be involved, because a lot of the teachers do have military history. A lot of teachers don't. They're just civilian teachers that are teaching at the school. But if you pick up on a lot of the examples or metaphors that you get from your military or veteran teachers, sometimes their training will give you insights into what it's like to actually live in the military. But at the same time, when you have a person who's been invested in the military, their whole career, and they like are teaching military history, or they're teaching Latin, or they're teaching these things, they pick them up with a fervor to be able to teach those from their interest and their perspective. So you get a lot of military interest through that way.
Okay, of course.
But they're also there all the time. A lot of them also have to be coaches after classes, because 24 hours of the cadet's life is already decided before the school year begins. So if you want to know on the 7th month of classes what you're going to be doing on a Tuesday, you can look at a chart and see exactly where you're going to be, what you're doing at that time.
I see.
And the teachers do cover a lot of roles. Like they also coach sports
Right,
after
coach and
class
stuff, yeah.
and stuff like that. So you can speak to these people on an actual personal basis, where you get to know them and they become mentors. And you actually, you don't just hear things and be like, "Oh, that's good advice. Maybe I'll take it." When you hear good advice from somebody who's your mentor, you're like, "I'm gonna, distill that and make that something I follow." So.
Okay, so would you say that speaking to some of these teachers, maybe not even in the classroom, but in in more that mentorship role, did that steer you towards wanting to sign up?
Yes, definitely. Like, because all right, so I was on a Raider team in high school, which is the high school version of the Collegiate Ranger team, which that's a college level of what tries to be the Army's Ranger Leadership School.
Okay.
So since I knew what that was in high school, like that was a goal that I had since being in high school and a military school, which I was able to get in 2006. I was able to earn my Ranger tab. So, I was very happy and ecstatic. I was able to click that, check that off the list.
Very
But
good.
the thing is, I was saying before is like, I do naturally like to be copacetic and calm, but I know that the motivation and discipline to stay on course to actually get to objectives and define milestones and reach them and to be able to actually pull teams together of everybody's tired and hungry and cranky and nobody wants to listen. You still got to have a mission to do. Yeah, sometimes you got to get very motivated in those situations.
Sure.
And I knew even as a kid I was lacking in that area, so I did kind of always have that extra conversation with a lot of the mentors I had in high school. And even now to this day I have friends and mentors that I'm so unbelievably like shocked that I even know or they want to ever spend time with me, but then I'm thankful that I get to pick their brains, like on bike rides and stuff.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's it was a wealth of information as long as you know I say that with only the mildest hesitation of everybody's got to be intelligent and you got to determine for yourself what is good advice
Of
that you're
course,
going to
yeah, yeah.
follow, what's good advice that you know is true but you're not ready for yet, and then what advice somebody may think is the best advice in the world, but you're like, yeah, maybe I'll get around to that sometime. But yeah.
My image, my very kind of limited like knowledge of like a military school and all, is that they would be like almost like teaching you as if in like the way that you would see the like military training, like lots of shouting and lots of
That's actually I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, of course, no, no.
Because I felt like I was picking up what you were saying with to a lot of people, their entire concept of military is basic training. So they just see drill sergeants yelling at new cadets
a full
with
metal
shaved
jacket.
heads.
Yeah.
Full metal jacket, but like the first half. But really, most people that are in the military really know like the last 30 seconds of that movie is the realest part because they're all just walking through the woods singing Mickey Mouse and M-I-C-K-Y because it's Mickey Mouse bullshit is what they used to call bullshit they had to deal with in Vietnam, from the chain of command. So that's why they're singing Mickey Mouse at the end of the movie, and saying that it's complete crap what they're doing. But the military school, most of that also doesn't come from the teachers because there's no need for an adult to yell at a sixth grader. And the school went from sixth grade to 12th grade. There's no reason for an adult to even have to yell at a 17-year-old senior. They're cadets. They should really be taught, and most of the teachers are there instilling lessons or guidance to people who are trying to teach their fellow students, and they're the ones who are actually the ones that have rank. So as soon as you're there, the first time you go there, the first year that you're there, you have to do 2-week cadet training before you can even begin taking classes.
I see.
And then you're still a new cadet for the first 2 weeks, even after classes begin. So for that first month that you're there, you're eating square meals, which when they say they give you 3 square meals a day, most people don't know where that comes from. But you have a chair in the cafeteria, and you have to sit a fist's edge from the edge of the chair and a fist's edge from the table measured by your chest. And you have to sit over the plate with your shoulders back and pull your fork up to your mouth, put it forwards, drop it down, pick up food, pull it forwards, eat, pick up. And that's a square meal. Military can define every single thing that they have anybody say that they're responsible for. It has to be able to be, judged wrong or right. And eating a meal is just as significant to a military life as anything else you do. So it's like, for example, there's a legendary information pamphlet that comes with the cans that cooks get, and it's a 22-page pamphlet on how to open up one of the cans. Because it's like you're feeding, like Army cooks are the only ones who literally, when they say we feed an Army, they're not joking around. They're actually legitimate about it. So if you get like bacteria on a pallet of cans and then you serve that to soldiers, you're gonna make a lot of people sick. So you got to take the label off. You got to wash the outside of the can. You got to freaking make sure that when you open it, that nobody cuts themselves on a can top and bleeds in the food. So there's like a 22-page pamphlet on how to open up a can. Yeah. But at the same time, things have gone. People have jumped out of planes before, and the chutes have failed because they didn't have the pamphlet yet, written.
I gotcha.
But yeah, the students are really the ones who gain responsibility, and mostly the discipline isn't instilled by negative reinforcement. Most of the discipline is instilled by, that you have 7 other kids in your squad. You may be, a sophomore in high school, and you have 7 freshmen in your squad. And those 7 freshmen don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to have to do extra work either. That they want to just do what they want to do, and then also have freedom to be able to be themselves within the limits of their time. So you're like, when you get up, you're like, not only do I want to do my own things so I can show them what to do, I want to be able to do it well enough for them to be like, I'm going to come to this person if I have any issues. So, a lot of the discipline is, responsibility enforced, not
so much shouting in your face.
Not shouting and stuff.
200 push-ups.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think anybody really learns that well, and I think that's why basic training is really short and in the beginning. But that's only really to ever break down people who may think that their ego is better than people who have already been there, and experienced things. So.
Okay, so what age? Or sorry, what year was it when you graduated high school?
I was 2002. It's class of 02.
2002. Okay.
And
did you want to go straight into the military?
Well, I was actually I was on track to go to VMI, but
which is what,
Virginia Military Institute. It's like West Point, but it's not as
prestigious.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's I'd say, well, people from West Point. All right, so the difference is VMI would never have to say they were as prestigious as West Point or not, and people from West Point would have to point out that they're more prestigious than VMI. Okay. That's the difference. That's my difference between the two schools. That's why I like VMI better. They don't have to say they're not as prestigious as West Point. But I wanted to, because I was in 4 years of military school, because I wanted to do my last 3 years of college at VMI, and I wanted to go into the Army as an officer. I chose to go to SUNY Albany for a year, which my older sister was a senior at when I would be a freshman there. It'd be the first time we were in the same school since elementary school.
Funny.
But when I went to Albany, I do like to tell people I got a 4.0, just not in that order. I got 100 in ROTC. And ROTC is when you're in college, you go through a ROTC program to become a second lieutenant in the Army. With a 6-year contract agreement. So it's the same as West Point. It's the same as if you go to any school that has a ROTC program, it's meant to go into the Army as an officer. Okay. That's how you get your commission.
So when you go to college, are you studying like a particular like a particular major?
Well, when I went to Albany, I was studying history because history was always an interest of mine. But I was going with, the mindset of studying history in a military capacity, so it could, further my military school, my military knowledge and stuff.
Right.
And when I went to Albany, I didn't really mesh well, I guess you could say, and I learned a lot about myself and about how I dealt with people and groups of people and different people, especially when I was in the Army. I was grateful for going to Albany because it gave me a very big culture shock going from a military school to going to a school where people would wear, for example, hemp socks to class when it was 9 feet of snow outside because it was upstate New York and it was Albany. But people were coming in from California going to school, like a state school in Albany, and they're wearing a hemp throw over and hemp sandals and shorts, and they're dying of cold, and they look purple, and you're like, what are you doing? And they're like, no, dude, this is what I wear. This is my lifestyle. I'm like, yo, no, not for upstate New York. It shouldn't be. But at the same time, people do have, different things that you have to kind of work within their, within and their quirks and stuff. And
fair enough. Okay, so you went to Albany after to do college. How long were you in college?
I went there for a year. Like I said, I got a 4.0. Just not in that order. So I was like, VMI probably wasn't going to accept me. So instead, I came and I got a phone call from a recruiter, and randomly, and he was like, "How do you think about joining the Army?" And I was like, "Bet. When do I come down?" And he's like, all right, we'll schedule for ASFAB. And so I took my ASFAB.
Which is what?
The Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, which it's pretty much the Army's way or the military's way of saying what job specifications really would suit you what levels of things like, because the test not only has English and math, but it has like these 6 different shapes are in an order. What's the next shape in this order? And then you got to pick. So it tries to test as much cognitive resources as you have to give you, a score. If you score, um, low or average, they'll give you different jobs. But then they also have it because if you score really high, they can offer you like star MOS positions. Like when I went in, forward observers have to do they have to do math on the fly in a combat zone while people are screaming over the radio that they need, fire support from artillery.
Who is this again?
All right, forward observers. So like,
Forward observer.
let's say like you're an infantry unit and you're in a village and you have to go through and do something, any kind of objective. And let's say you have 105 or 155 howitzer artillery cannons at your fob that can reach where your objective is. Well, the artillery guns can't see where you are. You can't tell them specifically what you're doing and where you are, especially if you're being shot at. So what happens is there's a forward observer who goes in and will find an observation point to be able to observe the infantry unit and be able to radio on comms back to the guns to be able to shoot, direct fire onto the objective. Yeah. So they got to be able to do math on the fly in, stressful environments to tell big guns to shoot close to our guys and be able to help them out in a fight. So it's like those guys are like, you want those guys to be the cream of the crop. They got star MOS there all over it. So like recruiters will get bonuses for signing people up for star MOSs.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I took the test and they were like, we'll give you $10,000 to be a forward observer. And I said, well, what do I get for joining the infantry? He said, nothing, like nothing.
You get to sign up.
You get the gratification of having a uniform, kid. And I was like, oh, well, how's the best chance of getting a ranger contract? Because I wanted to be a ranger since I was in like 9th grade. And I was like, oh, well, infantry, combat arms is probably your best bet. Okay. I was like, oh, so that's my bonus. And he's like, well, we can't give you a contract in your basic contract because they didn't have them. And I was like, oh, well, he said my best chances of getting one were in infantry. Yeah. I think my chances are good. So, sign up for the infantry. And that's what I want to do since I was young, so I'm happy I stuck with it.
Very good. Okay, so at the time of taking the test, you were what age? Early 20s?
Yes. Actually, 20 years old.
20, okay.
I got in a little bit of trouble right before I went to basic, and I know I turned 21 in basic. So it was a case of, slap on the knuckles real bad if you go through basic and learn your lesson. So I'm happy. Okay. Happy that it wasn't anything too bad,
Okay, very sorry. So you knew from an earlier age an earlier age that being a ranger is something you want to do. How did you regard like rangers, and how were they kind of viewed like within the military? Are they considered more elite?
Well, yes. So there's the regular army, the United States regular army, which is the standing army, and then you have smaller, more specialized units like the Marine Corps, for example, is its entire own corps. But anybody will tell you the Marine Corps is a lot smaller than the rest of the services by design. Their specific mission is everybody in the Marine Corps is a rifleman. And then they have secondary jobs. Like you might be an accountant for the Marines, but you're a rifleman, and then you also know accounting. Okay. Or you're a rifleman, and you're also a cook. Or you're a rifleman, and you're also doing quartermaster. Okay. But that's their first skill level. In the Army, we have quartermasters. Their job's a quartermaster. They do know how to fire a rifle if, God forbid, they need to. There's no reason our quartermasters should be really in the heat of combat. We're the Army. So, we have a lot of jobs and stuff. But in the military, there's combat arms, which is specifically for fighting. The Marines are all kind of combat arms, but they have their own mission. And within the combat arms, you can be regular Army, like line infantry, and that's what I was. I got my Ranger tab, but I'm what you're called tabbed but not scrolled. If you go through the Army Leadership School, you get a Ranger tab that you wear on your uniform, and it shows your graduation of the Leadership School, which defines you as somebody who is able to go through stressful training. And the reason it's called Ranger Leadership School, unlike the special forces, which are also elite, but in a different way, the special forces really trains how much an individual can withstand, and how much can they do, how much can they learn, and how much can they put up with and still be special forces, soldier. In the Rangers, it's with a squad of people or a platoon of people that have not eaten in days, have not slept in days, all have, high power weapons on them, no vehicles, and are walking through mountainous terrain in the woods. Can you get up in the morning and tell them that they got to go do a raid on a POW camp? Can you tell them that you have to do an ambush at a certain hour that's very far away, and you got to do a forced march to get there, and might have to get to a firefight exactly when you get there? Those people aren't going to be happy probably with the situation. But it's a leadership school. It's not about how much you can put up with. It's how much you can actually get out of the people that you're actually leading. So having the tab does mean a lot. But then there's also 3 battalions in the Army that are specifically Ranger battalions. There's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Battalion. 1st and 3rd Battalion are on the East Coast, and 2nd Battalion is in Washington State. And going through Ranger School, I really meshed with the 2nd Battalion, and I wanted to be 2nd Bat when I came back from Iraq. Obviously, plans changed after I got blown up, but I was serving with 10th Mountain, regular Army, light infantry, got the Ranger tab, so I had distinction within my unit. But also, I did want to go on and serve in a Ranger battalion, which would mean you're even with more specifically elite soldiers. Okay. And then, you'd always get more schooling from there, but that was always my plan.
I see. Okay, so you did just so I'm clear, your kind of early 20s. You did like the normal military training, the infantry, and then later on, how did would you say there was much of a difference between the regular army training and the Ranger one?
Yes. Well, Ranger school is normally 68 days, and so it's a school that you can be sent to like learn from. I think our class had a 25-30% graduation rate.
Oh, really?
And that's not including the fifth of people that they got rid of the first day, because you show up for day 0 and they do all the basic stuff like, can you swim across a pool without touching the ground in full BDUs and armor with a rubber rifle and hold it above the water the whole time and be able to tread across the entire pool after jumping into the pool from the high dive? So like, if you that a lot of people get up to the high dive and they're like, I'm not jumping in this fucking I'm not jumping in this pool. So it's like you can't have them go and be in the swamps on Zodiacs if they don't want to be in the water, you know. So yeah, like I think 450 people showed up the first day. They only have 350 beds. So it's like some people are not staying past day 0, but then those people that they keep, only of those like 30% graduated. But yeah, so it's normally very tough, and also the reason it's a basic, you go and you pretty much you go to basic and you learn basic stuff. And when I say basic training, a lot of people are surprised by basic training because they think like rifles and hand grenades. Now, basic training is like your body is now government property. How are you going to maintain not only your rifle, but your government issued body? So if you don't cut your nails regularly, you're going to scratch yourself or get a nail ripped off, and you're not going to be a viable soldier in the heat of battle. So you need to learn how to cut your nails regularly. You need to know how to shave without cutting yourself constantly. You need to know how to shower with only having like 30 ounces of water. And you're like, well, how do I do that? You're like, you take a handful of water and you pat yourself and you soap up and suds up and you use whatever water left to rinse off, because that might be the situation that you're in. That's why all of the crazy things that people have to go through basic are there for a reason. They're not there just to mess with people. But it's, insanely basic. Even like knowing what to eat and how to eat right, because a lot of people are never even taught that, in life. So you learn a lot of basic stuff there, and you just graduate as long as you're not completely inept at following basic stuff.
Okay, so like the weapons training and the more tactical stuff, maybe that comes later.
Yeah, well, I mean, like then you go, because everybody goes through basic, learn basic stuff, and then you go to your specific MOS, your military occupational specialty. My MOS was 11 Charlie. 11 Bravo is your basic infantry line unit. Because I did no math, they made me 11 Charlie, which is indirect fire. So I still had to do, math on the battlefield. But yeah, so like the difference between that and then other schools that you go into in the military is the other schools all have a way of making sure that people graduating aren't just learning what they need to out of a book and can repeat it as if lines in a play. They want people to use the information. So, like in Ranger School, they have not only the two different types of patrols that you have to get a pass on or a go, which is the raid and the ambush, but there's three different phases, and at the end of each phase, you get a piece of paper with everybody's name in your squad on it but you, and you just rank those people from one to however many people are in your squad, and it's a peer system. If you don't get above a 65 peer rating from the rest of your squad, you get you'll get a warning the first time. And if you don't step up your game and you don't get peered up higher by the rest of your squad anonymously, then yeah, no, you got to go home because it's a leadership school. The whole point is your peers respect you enough to listen to what you say and to follow you. And when they are tired and cold and hungry and hurt and really want to go home, are they going to still do what you say because they believe in you? So the peer system, as well as the learning and classroom stuff, is part of Ranger School.
I see. Again, again, this is I'm using another like scene from Full Metal Jacket, but there was one part when that one particular guy was like really slacking and really wasn't pulling his weight, and everyone was suffering because of it.
It's called a blanket party.
A blanket party.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we'll say like lateral enforcement. It's like the other guys. Is there any degree of that?
No. So that used to be something in the military. That used to be something that was commonly exercised because back then it was trying to literally, whip guys into shape by the command. So then the peers themselves would follow the command's example and wind up enforcing stuff on their own, which we found out leads to people acting the same way in highly stressful environments in combat, which you don't want them doing that to civilians. Why would you do that to your cadet, your soldier? Why would you have your soldiers do that to each other? If you don't want your soldiers to go into a village in the middle of the night and try to seek revenge because of, an ambush that they were involved in, you really shouldn't have them trying to ambush their fellow soldier, in the barracks. So even when I went to military school, my first year, it was definitely not authorized, but it happened. And there was ways that people would be, hazed in military school that had been done to them and, for generations before them. So they would be ways where people weren't injured. They were just really hurt by it, So, but then like after the first year, the second year, that was really like knocked out considerably. Okay. And I got to say by my senior year, hazing would really be like, and to the benefit of the result, hazing would be more having somebody have to do extra study hall, having somebody have to do a book report on something that they just didn't want to, when they knew they could be doing free time. They had their time to do whatever they want, but they got to do a book report because they were being, they were dragging everybody down. So like they didn't want to do that. Getting rid of mass punishment, training the entire, punishing the entire platoon for one person, bringing them down. You don't need your peers to instill discipline if you can do it as a leader, which I think is like a much healthier way.
I see. Okay. My kind of U.S. involvement in foreign wars is a bit rusty, but by the time you were doing your ranger training and so on, had the U.S. already been involved in conflicts in the Middle East?
Yes, I was actually a senior in high school during 9/11. One of the defining moments of my childhood, I was a second lieutenant responsible for 33 other cadets who were all from 9th through 12th grade. So some were in my own, class, and some were freshmen in high school. I had 33 other cadets that I was responsible for, and we were told to go in to the cathedral that was on the school campus. All 360 students are in there, and they just wheeled in a TV monitor, and they showed us the news channel playing both towers being hit by planes. Most of us thought, why are they taking us out of class for a movie? Like, like, we're not seeing a movie, right? Like, no, it was real life. And then the adults obviously had things to do and take care of, so the cadets were really responsible for being responsible for our fellow classmates in the cathedral. And somebody would come in with a list and read off a name, and that person would go, and they didn't know, like, we didn't know what was going on. And then by like the third person, all of a sudden you heard this girl screaming, absolutely screaming through like one door. And they were calling kids whose family, parents worked in the towers, and they would let them call their families and see if they were alive or not. And not all of them were. So, like, sitting there with the rest of your kids and seeing the shock in their face, thinking they're going to be the next ones called and it's going to be bad news for them, and still needing everybody to be able to get time on the phone, being able to keep everybody calm enough to where you're not selfishly overreacting, where they're taking time away from other people, being able to call at the same time, knowing and empathizing with them. Because my own dad was working. He was supposed to be in the courthouse that's right below the tower that day, but he got stuck on the bridge in traffic. And he's sitting there like, upset, horribly upset, like because he's afraid of heights, and he's stuck on a bridge over a big body of water in the city, and he can't get off the bridge, and he doesn't know what's going on, and until he sees like the whole city looks like it's foggy, and then he finds out what happened. But yeah, like, I didn't find out till the end of that day because I had to have everybody else in my platoon. They had to go before me. I couldn't jump the line. I wouldn't have done it as a person, but so it gives you a lot of empathy, but at the same time, respect for responsibility and making sure everybody gets their things.
Did I guess you were in the military school at the time of it happening.
Yeah, and then 2 years later, in 2003, is when we actually went into Iraq from Kuwait. Okay. And that's when I signed up at the end of 2003, and I went to basic in 2004. So by the time I got out of basic, we had already been in Iraq for a year. Right. And then 2004 to 2006, I was actually with the 4th Brigade of 10th Mountain that just stood up in Fort Polk, Louisiana. So we did train up for Afghanistan. And 2006 to 7, we were deployed to Afghanistan. And in 2007, the U.S. military was doing a surge of soldiers into Iraq. So we were called back from Afghanistan and trained up to go to Iraq in 2007. So then, from 2007 until March 2008, I was right outside Sadr City. The movie American Sniper, I've never seen it personally, but I know they're in an urban environment in Iraq in that movie. That's Sadr City. That's the area I was in East Baghdad. Oh, really? It was there until St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. I say it was a great that got blown up on a holiday, because first, I never have to remember the date, because I just St. Patrick's Day, whatever date that was. Second, got a lot of Irish family, so I'm never buying beer at a holiday barbecue or St. Patrick's Day parade again.
That's funny. That's funny. So when you like signed up, when you like signed up for the military, there was already a conflict going on, so it was assumed that you were going to combat. What's like the contract you signed? How is a number of tours, number of years?
There's different options available, and especially at the height of 2007 and 8, when we were trying to get as many people in the service as we could to get deployed. They were offering people 15-month contracts to join. Just to have one deployment is pretty much 15 months. But I signed up for a 4-year contract because that's really that's your basic normal contract. That's the minimum amount of time that they would normally let you sign up if it wasn't, during a war.
15 months was really an exception.
That was an exception because we really needed to get people, in the military. But normally it's 4 years, and then there's other things like the ROTC program I went in as lower enlisted, so non-commissioned. I went in as a private first class, and then became a specialist and a corporal. But if you go through the ROTC program and become an officer and get a commission, normally you have a 6-year contract. After that, that's mandatory service. But I actually, my contract had ended February 26th, but I was in Iraq already, and they don't send you home just because your contract expired. They're like the stop loss. They're like, well, we'll keep you there until we bring the rest of your unit back. But at the same time, I don't think I served with anybody who would have left in the middle of a tour, even if their contract did end, because everybody's already got too much on their plate, and if you leave, somebody else got to pick up that slack. So I was going to re-enlist before the end of the contract. But yeah, it's just funny that the contract ended February 26th, and I got blown up out of contract on March 17th. Really? So was past my contract originally.
Okay, yeah. So we'll come on to that. But did you have we'll say a specialty when you were deployed over there? Was there a particular area?
Well, the 11 Charlie MOS with the indirect. So. Part of the infantry squad, you have 2 teams. You have Alpha Team and Bravo Team. And within those 2 teams, you have team leaders for each, Alpha Team and Bravo Team, and then you have the squad leader. And then each one of those squads can have indirect fire support attached to them. So myself and 2 other guys have a 60-millimeter cannon that we can shoot really high over walls, over mountain cliffs. We can shoot really high over any kind of obstruction. It's really the if you know a little bit about military historical siege weapons, the difference between a catapult and a trebuchet.
A trebuchet has a thing that kind of thing underneath it.
Yeah, and it swings, and when it lets it go, it almost throws it straight up in the air. So a trebuchet you can put on a castle wall or outside a castle wall, and you could either land it right outside the castle wall or right over the wall. But a catapult, you're like, you got to knock down a wall. So even if you're way far back, it launches and it starts throwing almost at a straight line. Okay. So it'll go real hard, real fast in a straight line, but it ain't going over anything. So our howitzers nowadays are your back in the day catapults. They can shoot big things at almost straight lines, 3 kilometers. But if you want to get something over, a rock face onto somebody else's, cliff, you need something to high angle. So we actually had that specialty within our squads and deployed it in Afghanistan.
I'm sorry, are you actually standing next to the thing that's firing itself?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you drop it, you drop the round in the top of it, and you slide your hands down, your face away, and it slides down the tube, and there's a firing pin at the bottom. So when you slide it, it goes, and then explodes and shoots.
You take up the shell.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're actually beside it. Okay.
And
so that was your specialty.
And the 60 that we carried actually had a trigger fire mechanism if you wanted to. So you could put it on drop fire, where you just slide it down and immediately shoot out, or you could just put it on trigger fire, drop a round down, and be walking in the squad with a round down it. And then if something happens, you drop to a knee, you plant it at the base, of your knee in the ground. You don't want to fire it on your knee. You destroy your entire limb. But you put it on the ground in front of your knee, and you aim it with your thumb, and then you pull the trigger at the base of it. It'll just lob, a 60-millimeter grenade or a rocket or whatever. You call them. But in Iraq, though, and the thing I loved about the infantry is the infantry wasn't expected to just be riflemen. They weren't expected to just know squad movements through or terrain, because that's what the Marines do. Like the Marines are your your foot through the door. They're your they're the greeting card. They are the ones who say hi first, pretty much. Okay. The Army's mission is boots on the ground. Like, okay, so the Marines went through and got rid of all the bad guys. Well, they don't have enough people to make sure they don't automatically get surrounded by new bad guys. Yeah. So the Army goes in. But in Iraq, you can't use high angle fire because a lot of times you got a bracket. It's like you blow something up slightly past your target, then you pull it in, and it's like slightly in front of your target, and then you get closer. You can't be like, you blew up the house 3 ones down. You got to bring it in. You got to hit the house. You can't bracket fire. So when we got to Iraq, instantly they were like, you're not allowed to use your main weapon. You're not allowed to have your main job. You're not allowed to use that. So do something else. And you're like, my entire MOS, my entire military occupational specialty is no longer valid, and you just said do something else. And like, I'm already in Iraq, so I better be doing something important. And you got to find a job and be able to adapt and overcome and excel in stressful, environments. And it was great.
So I'm sorry. The first place you said you went was it Iraq, Afghanistan?
I went to Afghanistan first, and then came back and went to Iraq.
Okay, so do you remember? I guess landing in Afghanistan was your first time, like really getting over to that part of the world. Do you remember your first kind of first impression, first thoughts?
Yeah, it was breathtakingly gorgeous.
Really?
Because Afghanistan is the Himalayan mountains are up there, and Afghanistan itself, really no soil or earth. It's all just like and there's no sand. It's not a desert. It's like the moon. We actually called it moon dust because it's all dirt. It's just flat dirt for miles, for a country's length from side to side almost. And there was really no paved roads in the country other than Highway 1 at the time, which I said they should have named like Highway 14. So you were guessing where the other 13 highways were because there was no other paved roads in the country. But it was pretty much just like a beltway around the whole country. And if you went anywhere else, you had to drive 2 days on a dirt road. And when we first got there at Bagram Air Force Base, it's in the middle of this basin of mountains that's the entire perimeter is just surrounded in these 1,000-foot rock faces that come out of the ground like they were just spikes on the earth. And there's like no rolling foothills or anything because the Himalayan mountains are a new mountain range geologically from India, like smacking into the other countries, continent and stuff. But the flat ground straight to these mountains in this basin. When you got there, it was like you felt like you were in a snow globe because it was like majestic. It was beautiful. But then you got on the ground and you landed, and then you had to drive outside the airport place, and then it got rough.
How soon after arriving did you meet some kind of was it combat or fire or
well, before I got there, stuff had already popped off. Our unit was relieving another unit, and as our unit was filling in, the unit that was going out had been attacked recently by an ambush and had gotten an AP RPG round, which is an armor-piercing rocket-propelled grenade. And the AP armor-piercing grenade went through the back of the door of their Humvee and went through the leg of one of the dismount guys in the back, through the leg of the gunner who was standing in the middle of the truck on the 50 cal, and then through the head of the driver. And that truck was part of our list of receiving vehicles. So a detail had to be tasked to clean the truck out and remove the door and fix the door because the truck was still good. So it's like first 15 minutes there, and they're like, hey, go clean the blood and brains out of that thing, please. And like, okay, I got to, it's like you're here to do what you have to. And you're like, yeah, this is not a great introduction to being deployed, but you're like, I guess it's risky. Maybe I won't become complacent. Maybe I won't like nap on guard, like I'll keep my head on a swivel.
So the actual combat between U.S. troops and Afghan various groups, did these tended to be like, we'll say like a shootout, like a gun battle with RPGs?
In Afghanistan and Iraq, they were two completely different theaters with completely different standard operating procedures and the way that all right, so in the Taliban in Afghanistan was pretty much like a tribe of their own, where they weren't in a individual village, but they were almost like a tribe that was just there in the mountains, that were always trying to come down from the mountains and trying to either get villages on their side or recruit, from villages, or they were trying to put things on the side of the road. And if you got a truck that got hit by an explosion in Afghanistan, you instantly had to go on guard because it was normally initiating an ambush, and they were going to be coming at you with AKs, and that's why in Afghanistan, when we worked with the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police Forces, they were normally the ones in the front. They were normally the ones that we were trying to help, have their own military and their own infrastructure, and we would be fighting with them, and normally, yes, there would be actual conflicts back and forth. But in Iraq, when we were fighting against Al Qaeda, they had a completely different way of manipulating and abusing their populations. Whereas in the Taliban, they were trying to actually get people like into their organization and on their side. In Al Qaeda, they were like, if you're in Iraq and you have a sick wife, you got 6 kids because you had 9, but 3 of them are already dead, and you got 3 that are already sick, and the other 3 are the ones that like are taking care of them at home. And there's not even garbage cans in Iraq to get apple cores out of. There's nowhere for even homeless people to beg for food. So you're in that situation, and somebody from Al Qaeda says, "Hey, we'll mail you a box. You don't even have to open it. You just dig a hole in the side of the road, drop the whole box in it, fill it up, and we'll send you a cell phone and a camera. You go up on a rooftop, you record you dialing a number, and you record that little pop of dirt on the, where you place that box on the side of the road when an American convoy is driving by. You mail us that video recording, and we'll send you like 3 years' salary that you would normally be getting." And it's like, you don't hate Americans, you don't support Al Qaeda, you got a sick wife and 3 kids that are on the way to the other.
Basic survival needs.
Yeah, and you're like, that's why when I got blown up in Iraq, I never hated the guy. I never thought he was my enemy. Really? Yeah, he detonated the roadside bomb because of his situations, but I mean, I can't say I wouldn't have taken that risk to support my family. At the same time, Al Qaeda was definitely the enemy. They were the ones that were manipulating and using the population to try to harass. But like, that's why in Iraq, if you got a truck that was blown up, you just immediately went into react to IED, react to EFP hits, and you just set up a perimeter just so you can get the person on their way to get recovery, because Al Qaeda wasn't there fighting you. They were there manipulating people to take advantage of them. So whereas in Afghanistan, yeah, you might have a heads up fight. In Iraq, it normally was, what kind of new technology could you design that would find the roadside bomb before they detonated it?
Okay. Okay, so what was the we'll say like the frequency of combative situations? What was that a lot less in Afghanistan? Was there kind of less of them?
Not really less of them. I would say the impact on us was about the same, because any time that you have to train for reacting to an enemy conflict, or you have to actually be exposed to reacting to enemy conflicts, it's really like you might be in an ambush and in a fight that might go on for a day or two in Afghanistan. In Iraq, you might have 6 different bombs blow up in a day on the side of the roads. So it's like, yeah, 6 different individual events, and the other one is one event that lasted the same amount of time, but both of them really wind up being the same effect because you're just constantly dealing with things.
I see.
But yeah.
Okay. So let me go back to Afghanistan. You were in Afghanistan how long?
We actually were supposed to be there 12 months, but like I said, they were trying to send people to Iraq during the surge in 2007. So they actually clipped our 12-month deployment down to 6 months and brought us back, and then sent my unit to Iraq 6 months after that for 15 months to Iraq.
Okay, I see. Did you ever in your 6 months in Afghanistan, did you ever get to meet any of the locals, the Afghanis?
Yeah, that was pretty much only thing. When I first got there, we were on the FOB for like 2 days before they're like, we need a unit at this fire base, which a FOB is already remote because it's a forward observation base. Okay. But then you have fire bases, which are even kicked out further into the villages and towns and stuff. So I had one. Our platoon had 26 guys in it. There was supposed to be a full company of 210 to 220 guys there, but we didn't have a company. We only had a platoon to be able to send out, so we only had 26 guys there. And we were stationed and embedded with the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police, which are Afghani people as part of their own service coming from around the country, and were deployed in their own country with us, but just as deployed as we were. But then we were stationed at it was a marketplace during the day because people would drive in during the morning into these little structures that we stayed at. We were the only ones that stayed there. Everybody left at night and it was always empty. Okay. But during the day, people would drive in, 60 miles from where they lived with propane tanks. And then the surrounding villages within 30 miles would all walk into the village that day to fill up their propane tanks and then walk them back the 30 miles to their village each day. So that marketplace, was a tiny little place, but it existed right by the Pakistani border and the mountain range that bisect the Pakistani border and Afghan border. So they would try to sneak trucks through mountain ranges during the winter and during in remote places to be able to get weapons to fight us with. So we were stationed there to prevent that kind of traffic and smuggling coming in and out. And when we were there, since we only had 26 guys, since we were in a very remote area where it would take 2 days to get any other vehicle to us because it was all dirt roads. And it was during the winter, so it was like 6 feet of snow on top of endless dirt.
It snows in Afghanistan?
Oh, yeah. Afghanistan's up there by Russia, people forget. Like, during the winter, it would snow like 4 feet, and then it's not on like asphalt or grass. It's 4 feet on dirt. So during the daytime, it would melt. And when I say like we lost entire trucks underground, I don't mean like in a tunnel or a cave. I mean like we just driving, and all of a sudden a wheel goes off the tracks of the vehicle in front of you a little bit, and it goes into a berm, and then you try to back it out, but backing out the vehicle makes the wheels dig in the ground, and then you take another truck with a tow rope and you try to dig it out, and you wind up getting the entire front end sunk in the ground, and then it just slowly starts bubbling, and you're like, we're losing it. You gotta wait till nighttime for the ground to freeze and then shovel it out so you can pull the vehicle out. But it's like it'd take 2 days, if at best, to get vehicle to us. They couldn't get rotary wing to us or like helicopters. They couldn't get helicopters to us because the mountain range was between us and where the helicopters were. And during the winter, all the fog on the mountains, they can't get them up over without risking slamming in the side. The only way they can get us supplies is airdropping us stuff from 20,000 feet that would be frozen solid the second that we got to it. Anything they gave us was just frozen solid. And also, they were airdropping it from 20,000 feet, so they'd be like, here's the GPS grids to where we dropped it, which could be anywhere in that area, especially next to another Afghan village of people who have nothing. And they just saw manna from heaven, literally food falling out of the sky. They're running out there and grabbing, it is funny because, like, you get to an airdrop of, your supplies, and you see people running away from it, and you see, like, a little Afghani kid, this guy be like 8 years old, with 3 boxes of MREs and a blanket, like on his shoulders, like hauling ass. And then you're like, all right, leave him, let him take it. We got a company's worth of stuff. We're only 26 guys anyway. Go pick it up and put them in the trucks. And then you got these big burly American soldiers with 2 boxes of MREs in their hands. And like, it hurts my fingers. Like, I can't carry this much. You're like, I just saw an 8-year-old running through the freaking snow with 3 boxes. You can't carry 2.
I don't know if you got the chance to speak to them much, but what did the like generally speaking the Afghanis what do they think of U.S. presence in their country?
So the first 3 months I was there was actually in what you call like the boonies of Afghanistan. So their populated areas are already kind of sparse because it's a big country and they're spread out everywhere, and there's not enough infrastructure for people to easily travel. So there's very remote areas. And we went to a village one time, and they thought we were Russian because that was the last they heard anybody was in their country.
It's white people, right?
We had we went to another village. They hadn't seen any outside medical treatment, not even a Band-Aid, in 30 years. So it's like, What do you mean, like you haven't gone to the dentist to get a cleaning in 6 months? Like, no, they hadn't seen anybody who owned a Band-Aid in 30 years. So it was like, yeah, well, our medic went out and was like, you know, a miracle worker when we were there. And when we first got there, we did get attacked a few times. We got ambushed a few times. And what I really loved about my unit is they knew that we weren't there long enough for them to really dislike us that much. So we'd like roll up to places that had conflict and static with us, and we would just stay right outside their effective range of fire. And we had armor and stuff, so we would let them kind of like wear themselves out a little bit, and we'd roll up to the village and be like, "Hey, water under the bridge. Just trying to find out what's going on.
Oh, really?
How's your day going?" Like, hey, it's cool. Don't worry, nobody got hurt. It was pretty loud. We were like, that's very, very, very effective, by the way. We're watching you guys. Like, you did it spot on. Just any way we could help today? And they would, very standoffish at first, obviously. Like, if you lose a fist fight with somebody, you're normally not eating lunch with them the same day. But at the same time, some of my best friends my entire life were kids I got in the fist fights with in school, So it doesn't mean that you're lifelong enemies.
Yeah.
And because we would approach them with a clean sheet every time, eventually they absolutely loved us. And every time we rolled up on a village, people were bringing stuff out of the house to throw in the air just to say, like, they were celebrating us showing up.
Right. Do you know how among, we'll say, the general population, do you know how the Taliban were viewed?
Yeah, pretty much. There's a lot of it's my opinion, of course, just from my personal anecdotes, but the Taliban there was an extremist group. Most of the villagers didn't care what other countries were doing. They didn't care what was going on in the world. They couldn't support themselves in their own villages. Most people didn't want to get into fights. Most people liked that the Americans were there because we were handing out bags of rice and jars of honey and giving out food. I handed out way more aid bags of food than I ever have packed bullets in the magazines to shoot. And I'm thankful that the reason I'm a proud soldier is because the military, especially today, would rather go in and have the hearts and minds of the population rather than just trying to exterminate an enemy. So it was pretty much and when we were in Iraq, it was even closer working with people because it was, like I was saying, like in Afghanistan, you had an extremist group in the mountains that would come down and try to harass and recruit from the villages for their own stuff. Most people didn't want to deal with them. But in Iraq, it literally just had poor people that were being exploited, for Al Qaeda's gain. And if you went in and worked with the local NAC and DAC leaders or the local, national or district leaders and stuff, and helped improve their situations, they had no reason to need to answer that phone call. So like then you would actually be not only improving the country that you were, occupying for the reasons that we were, but you'd also be letting them get their own infrastructure, get their own, responsibility and leadership. And so it was like every day, every night, when we were working, it was hand in hand with the countries that we were in, to kind of not try to set up governments for them, but make it to where they can set up their own, systems that would actually survive after we left.
Yeah. Among soldiers, was it generally seen? Did they generally see themselves as being here in this country, doing something that's worthwhile, something that's helping people, or was it like, a lot of people would have a more cynical view of the U.S. being in the Middle East and so on?
I've personally only talked to Americans that were cynical about us being in different countries. Most other people are against us for either ideological reasons, and it's something that's like it's something that's either like it's either something like that's internally something that emotionally is they are against America, and it's easy to know those people because when you're standing in front of a traffic point and the people yelling and screaming at you that they want to kill you and murder you and stuff, and you're like, okay, you know, we are the army though. We will retaliate
Yeah.
if you do. They're gonna still yell and scream at you, and they're gonna hate you fervently. But those people were always the minority, and like very few people at all. Most people don't want to have to deal with their own country's military or another country's military. Most people want to get up and like go to work and get an income and be able to have a family and be able to date and be able to go to whatever religious practices they want and become fulfilled and self-actualized. So most of the people that we were there, yeah, of course, I almost equate it like working with any kind of government. Like, yeah, you'd rather do it yourself. You'd rather be independent. You'd rather be able to do your own resume and jobs and stuff. But if you lost your job in a time where your family really needed income, maybe unemployment insurance isn't such a bad thing. Maybe it's good to have that there. But at the same time, you had to pay taxes the whole time you're working to support it. So, it's something that's a tool that's there for you to use. It shouldn't be the first tool,
Right. Yeah.
and it shouldn't be dependent on. But at the same time, it should always be dependable when used. So, like most people, just wanted to be able to do their thing. Most things that we did with people, they were grateful for and loved us being there. Not everybody ideologically wanted us there, and those people, most of them you aren't going to convince anyway. But I handed out a lot of soccer balls too to kids who maybe they might not ever like us. Maybe their kids might say, hey, they're not so bad.
Okay.
So you can really see, and I also love it because you can see the exact effect of what you were doing in a place. Like we brought water distribution to Solder City, and we're able to actually help a lot of people move from Fallujah to Solder City when the Marines were going through Fallujah because there were so many Al Qaeda people in the area, and be able to set up an electricity grid for people to actually have electricity that wasn't lighting things on fire every day, in their houses, and being able to do that, and then people. Like when you drive through the neighborhoods, like they come out in the streets and they're clapping. You're driving down the street, but then all of a sudden, like you're rolling down the same street a week later, and there's absolutely nobody outside, and you're like, "This is eerie. Like it's real quiet. Why is nobody?" And then, like a third truck explodes because there's a bomb on the side of the road, and not that anybody there doesn't like you. They were all just clapping on the side of the road for you a week before, but Al Qaeda said, "Hey, we're going to blow up this road." And everybody else is like, well, we're not going to tell them no. We're not going to jump in front of bullets for the American army, but we're not going to be in the marketplace that day either, So, like all kind of
I see.
interactions, I guess it really...
I see. So you get over to Iraq. Would you say there was like a kind of like an average day, like some kind of like daily routine that would repeat itself?
Yeah, like it's very mission oriented and goal oriented in life. So like in the infantry and the combat arms, there's normally 3 phases of the day that you go through. One phase is your active, mission. So if you're on an active mission, if there's any patrols that have to be done, if there's anything from just a presence patrol where people see your trucks driving up and down the road so they know you're there, or there's a mission for going in and arresting a high value target, an HVT. Whatever the patrols are, your active phase is when you're on the patrols doing those patrols. Then there's a second phase, which is QRF, or Quick Response Force. If you're on a patrol, doing a presence patrol, and a truck gets blown up, they instantly need backup. So QRF is always on standby, always geared up, ready to roll out at a moment's notice to support any unit. And then your third phase of the day is your refit. It's when you get to do everything from cleaning your weapon to, working out at the gym to, sleeping.
Okay.
and normally sleep is like way down the priority list because your other two phases you're not sleeping, you're either on guard or you're doing patrols. So your refit phase is like normally the other 8 hours of the day, and you're like, as long as you can work out and eat and shower and do hygiene and clean the environment and do any kind of studying and reading you want, talk to family and friends or follow any interests or hobbies you have, and then you also get to sleep during the same time.
I see. Like I'd imagine. I mean, like you let's say you go out on a patrol. There was, even if it wasn't a particularly big incident, even if there was something, I'd imagine it would be very it would be like an incredibly stressful day of work. So coming home, like for those downtime hours, how did people kind of unwind from that?
Well,
Even just you, like.
So, yeah, it wasn't not stressful. So I'm not gonna say it was easier. It wasn't unstressful, but it wasn't so stressful either, because you're always constantly doing something, and there's always constantly not enough people to have to do too much work to accomplish a mission that seems impossible with a standard that is expected to be above incredible. So you're always constantly trying to do the next best thing better than you can do whatever you just did before, and it all has to be building up to something. And because I couldn't use my the mortar, the 60 millimeter mortar in Iraq, I wound up falling in for intelligence gathering, because the Army had always done intelligence gathering and compiling stuff and making decisions on it at battalion level, but it was too slow for operating in an urban environment. We needed instant information gathering, dissemination, and being able to react at company level, and it had never been done before. So they elected random people in the company to do that for each one of the platoons. Eventually, like, everybody kind of found a different job than that, because like I wound up doing that for every single patrol and the first sergeant and CO during my time Sorry, the dogs.
They're fine. Sorry, okay.
But yeah, so I, falling into that position actually gave me the ability to go out on every single patrol that almost went out with whoever was leading the patrol. So if they were going to be asking questions of a local leader, or if the local leaders were going to be asking stuff of them, the lieutenant couldn't record all that stuff as he's doing his patrol. He's got to be doing stuff. But he also needs that information when he gets back to be able to make decisions on. Okay. So it was my job to pretty much compile all of the information that was going on during the patrols and bring it back, compile it, make like a presentation that the second lieutenant could then use to describe what's going on in our sector to his leadership. So like if a second lieutenant took credit for my report, it wasn't like, oh, I can't believe he took credit for my report. It was, holy crap, he used my report. He used my report to actually talk to like generals and stuff. Like, I was thrilled about that. So it's like, if I was on another patrol and I got back, I was on the computer like making spreadsheets and making PowerPoint presentations of it. So then, like, by the time I get to sleep, it's instant lights out because my brain just clicked off, and I'd wake up ready to go because I knew I was probably already supposed to be in a truck by the time I woke up. So like the constant having objectives and goals, and then meeting those goals, and being able to further on to other missions and stuff, kept my mind busy. So coming home, it wasn't so much decompressing from that as it was staying inflated enough to be able to want to continue on in that measure. Because I didn't want to retire at 25 when I got blown up. I still have most of my life to live. So getting back, and people, the hardest part was probably be, and understandably so, people knowing that you lost your legs, and I died twice, before they were able to really stabilize me and be able to know that I was going to live. But you get back, and people are like, take it easy, well, I'll get you something. If you need a glass of water, I'll get you a glass of water. If you need something, tell me. I'll go to the store for you and get your groceries for you. And you're like, I could say yes to all that, and I could live like a fat slobbish king, but I don't want to be a fat slobbish 20-year-old king. You know, I want to say I've done more stuff than just that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not so much decompressing as it is staying, properly compressed.
I see. I see. So, by the time your contract was up, you were still in Iraq, and this had been 4 years or 6 years.
It was 4 years for my contract.
Okay, so you were in Iraq for what, about over just over 3 years?
Well, no, like the Iraq deployment itself was actually 15 months long, and I was only there for 6 months before I got blown up because we got there in like October, and I got blown up in March. My unit still stayed there the full 15 months before they came out. I had just ended 4 years in the Army, being stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, having been deployed twice.
Okay.
But my Fort Polk, Louisiana was my military home for 4 years. But then I got blown up in Iraq, lost both my legs above the knee, degloving wound to my dominant right hand. There's an entrance wound on the base of my elbow.
Okay.
And then, so the piece of shrapnel, it entered. I was on a hand mic in the passenger seat of an up armored vehicle, leaning up against the door, talking to the driver and the gunner while also looking out the front. And our truck got hit through the side door, my side door. And when the EFP broke through the armor, a piece of shrapnel was heading for my jugular vein. But because I had this hand mic up against my ear, it went in my forearm here, bounced off my ulnar and my radius, took a couple of bones of my wrist, the second metacarpal of my hand, and just deflected far enough away from my face to where it hit my hand, but that blocked my whole face from getting destroyed by the shrapnel. I would have been decapitated. So, being wounded in Iraq, the Army doesn't want to they're not going to say, oh, well, now go home, you're a civilian. So they keep you at, either San Antonio or in Washington, D.C. at Walter Reed. And I went to Walter Reed in Washington, D.C., recovered there for 2 years. So my contract was actually 6, in total, 4 planned, 2 unplanned. But, as soon as I reached 100% of, possible recovery, then I came home and became a veteran.
Okay. Can you take me back to what you remember about that particular day when
I was blown up?
Yeah. Okay.
I was told a lot of people weird about me saying that, or it comes off weird when I say it the first time, but literally, it's funny. I always describe it.
Oh no, it's your experience.
But
okay, so you're out on patrol.
So we're on patrol. We were actually turning the truck that I was in. We were getting rid of that truck because it had an old intercom system with a hand mic radio. When all the trucks now have these helmets with the earphones that go over and a little hand mic, the little mics on the ear, so you can leave your hands, free to do writing or whatever you want. If I had if I had the new fancy trucks when I got blown up, I'd be dead right now. But I had the old stuff we were getting rid of, so thank God. I mean, we were decommissioning it, so we were already getting rid of the truck, so we didn't lose a truck when it got blown up anyway. It was, it was beneficial. It was my truck, I guess. But we were. So normally they try to hit the third truck in a convoy because normally it's 4 trucks, and normally a sergeant's in the first truck and there's a lieutenant in the third truck for command and control distances, and they know that, so they'll normally try to hit the third truck in a convoy. But because we're getting rid of a truck, we had 5 trucks in the convoy, so they still hit the third truck aiming for the lieutenant, but the lieutenant moved the truck back, and there's a sergeant in the second, and there's a lieutenant in the fourth now. There's 5 trucks, so it's like they hit the truck they wanted to. It just happened to be that it wasn't the truck they thought it was.
He hit it with what?
And all right, so a lot of wars are always about escalation. So originally they would take old artillery shells, like 105, 155 howitzer shells, daisy chain them on the side of the road, and blow those up. Because originally we had light-skinned Humvees because they're faster, and we were originally invading. But those trucks would kill soldiers if they didn't have armor. So then we would get armor. So then those howitzers, those artillery shells, were only giving people migraines. They weren't really killing anybody. They weren't hurting anybody because we had the armor. So to fight us with the armor, they got EFPs, which were explosively formed penetrators. If you imagine like a soda can, how it's concaved at the bottom,
Okay.
the soda can itself would be a pipe with a cap on one end, and the soda would be in actual explosives like Simtex, C4, something with a lot of bang in it. And then the bottom of the soda can would just be a copper plate. And when the whole principle is, they put like a garage door sensor on it,
Okay.
and hook it up to a battery and a cell phone. So the person with the video camera and the other cell phone can dial a number. The cell phone turns the laser beam on, and it's like a garage door sensor across the road. So when a third truck breaks the sensor, instead of doing a garage door, it initiates the explosion, and the explosives go off, and it forces the blast through the copper plate towards the road. And the copper becomes a molten copper slug that travels over 1 kilometer a second. And it just punches right through armor so that it can actually get into the inside and do damage to the soldiers. So there was 4 of those, and each one of the copper plates was 6 inches in diameter, which means that they were aiming for a truck much bigger than ours. We had just gotten MRAPs into the country, and MRAPs have a V-shaped hole at the bottom, and it's meant to fight against EFPs, because the whole idea of the V-shaped hole is that if the EFP hits a flat surface like a door, it's going to punch through it. If it hits a angled surface, like it'd be deflected into the ground away from the vehicle. So like they probably thought those were the vehicles that we were going to have, because the EFP was so big it actually just cut the front of our vehicle off and barely even hit us. But yeah, if it would have hit us, we would have been in much worse condition. But yeah, our truck going about 55 miles an hour down the road, being cut in half, like a laser beam. The front of our truck actually kept sliding down the road, and then the body of our truck that we were in actually went off the road into a dirt field. And I remember feeling initially blown up, which the best description I could. If you ever hit a baseball with an aluminum bat in like the winter, and you get that shock through your forearms, you imagine that just like multiplied through your whole body. So that for like a split second, and then knocked out.
Okay,
But then like I came to a couple seconds later, and I couldn't see anything because I'm in the passenger seat of the truck. I didn't know the front of it was already cut off, but it was smoking. So there's smoke being filled into the cab of the vehicle. I can't see anything. But I know I just got blown up, so I got to start doing my training, for my self-assessment. So I raised my hands up to my head to start doing a self-assessment, see if I'm injured.
You had the presence of mind to...
Yeah, instantly. And then like I felt something on the inside of my thigh when I was reaching up, though. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Because it was moving with my hand, but it was reaching my thigh. And my thumb had been cut to where there was only like a half-inch flap of skin holding my thumb on, and my thumb was dangling down. So when I had my hands up here, my thumb was low enough for me to feel it in my lap, but I couldn't see it because of the smoke.
Your thumb was down.
I couldn't see it because the smoke's pouring in. So like I lean back and I lift my hand up to be able to see it, and I can see my ulnar, I can see my radius, I can see my wrist, and I can see all the metacarpals in my hand, and I could even see my finger bones because my skin had been degloved from my hand. So I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, I gotta tell a medic. This is obviously a medic thing. And I reach my hand up, and I'm like, hey, medic. And like I'm using that hand. I'm looking at the bones move against the air, and like with my eyes, my first actual audible words are, I'm a Terminator. I'm an effing Terminator. Like, yo, Terminator 2, he cuts the skin off. I'm a Terminator.
That was the example that came to my head.
It was the first thing I thought of. I thought it was hilarious. So like I called, over to the guys, and they thought I didn't make it originally. So they'd removed the driver and the gunner away, and were doing, immediate aid on them.
Was anyone else hit in your vehicle?
It was only the 3 of us in the truck. Since we had the 5 trucks, we only needed a driver, a TC, and a gunner in that truck. Right. Forbes, the driver, was actually injured from the left side, because when all the shrapnel and all the explosion gets pushed into the vehicle, I was injured from that side because that's the side I was on. Okay. But an explosion, even though it's really quick, is always 2 directions. It pushes everything away from it, but then it sucks everything back into the space. Because an explosion creates a vacuum, and a vacuum gets filled by air. So like it explodes out and then rushes back in, and all the shrapnel in the vehicle on the his side, when it got pulled back, from the explosion, just ripped through a lot of his tendons, ripped through like the base of his hand, and then our gunner, his inner eardrum was blown out on his right side, and he had shrapnel peppered up and down his body, but he was relatively, capable after that. So he's the one who actually pulled the driver out and immediately tried to do aid on him. Well, his ear was literally leaking fluid, out of his head. So, I woke up and I was called over to them, and they were like, "Holy shit, he's alive!" So they came over and they took me out of the vehicle, and it was it's a couple funny stories that came out of that. I gotta tell you, like I got way more funny stories than I got harrowing stories. So some are indecent to tell in most situations though, but I'll tell you a borderline story. It's like when I got blown up, they got to take me to the aid station, right? They got to take me somewhere so a surgeon could try to save my life. Okay. So they got another truck to come around.
Straight away, you've been.
Yes, like I've been blown up. I'm literally on the side of the road, like tourniquets bleeding out.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you notice your legs at that stage?
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, all right. So when I raised my hand up and I got their attention, like I still needed to know what was going on. So like I continued my self-assessment and knew that I could deal with whatever was wrong with my hands, and I could feel my feet felt like when you're out in the snow for a really long time, and then you come in and you take your boots off, and it's like you could feel your feet, but you could feel that you can't feel your feet,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like I couldn't feel my feet, but I couldn't see them because of the smoke. So really the only thing that I've ever really had any really bad regrets about involving my military experience is for a second, like I thought I was paralyzed, and I felt horrible that I was going to be paralyzed. And then I felt my legs and that they were gone. And I felt such a relief that I wasn't paralyzed, that I could use prosthetics and like I'd be able to do that. But then I was like, what if I was paralyzed? Why would I be defeated by that but been fine with losing my legs? Like, do I think that people who are paralyzed can't do just as much shit as people who use prosthetics? So I was like, that thought shouldn't have ever occurred to me. But at the same time,
but in such an extraordinary
if
situation,
that's my worst thought, I really can't judge myself horribly for it. I give myself some leeway, so I don't stress about it. But at the same time, like it would have been better for me to have had my eyes fully open at the time and been able to deal with even that if it was the situation. But so I knew my legs were gone. I knew my hand was all jacked.
So sorry, I interrupted. They picked you up and you're heading off to.
So this is a funny story. So they slid me into the back of another truck, and the way Humvees are is there's the driver and then there's the passenger, which is the TC. Then there's the dismounts in the back. They sit behind the driver and behind the passenger. And in the middle of the truck, there's a platform for a guy to stand on because he sits above the truck and with like a 50 cal or a Mark 19 grenade launcher or whatever's on vehicle mounted.
Some big.
So it's a big gun, and but he's standing on a flat square that's in the middle of the truck. That's where they slid me because they got to transport me to the hospital. So the gunner's got to stand on the driver's seat and then the ammo crates in the back above me. So he's like straddling the truck like above me, right? The Army's first iteration of ACUs, the Army combat uniform, were only single stitched. So I mean, instead of being triple stitched, they only had a single thing of thread through them. And if you tuck your boots into your pants and you have knee pads on and you take a knee, your crotch rips open. And like also in the Army, like nobody wears underwear. Because it just, you're so sweaty all the time, it just becomes like a cheesecloth after like a few hours. So you go commando. That's what's called going commando. So like, I'm literally blown up and thrown into this truck, and I die. And the medic fucking lost my heartbeat, and he's crying because the sergeant's yelling at him on the radio to find my heartbeat now. And the medic's like, he's not breathing. Like he's no heartbeat. Like we think we lost him. And like he's like, all I hear is, better find it now. You better find it now. So like I'm coming to, I'm like, what are they looking for? So I'm looking around, and I look up, and the gunner is just dangling, over me, and I'm like, what is this? I look up at the gunner, and the gunner looks down, knowing I'm blown up, and goes, "Nice picture, huh?" You're like, such an ass. Doesn't matter the situation. We're all asses. We're all just funny asses. That's what you know. But yeah, so like getting blown up and you still got great stories from it. You know, it's
to have a sense of humor in the moment. Like
yeah.
that as well. Okay, so they lost your vital signs.
I came back. So there's rumors like that I got died 9 times because they don't count that as one of them. The medic could have just lost my heartbeat. He didn't have a stethoscope to be able to tell. He's doing it by finger and by like observation. On the table though, like they didn't have to resuscitate me twice. So, but yeah, being in the truck, going down the road and laying down, hanging out, like it's. I guess shock is a wonderful thing. I would say it's great that the human body, when dealing with a certain amount of traumatic pain, will just be like, nah, like we're gonna flip that switch off for now.
So you weren't actually feeling
no pain at all, and not even like, and like fully comprehending my situation. So I could have easily been flipping out in my situation because I knew exactly what was going on, but at the same time, I wasn't in pain. I wasn't dealing with discomfort. I was completely pain-free, so I wouldn't want to be flipping out. Just like the dog situation I brought up in the beginning. We could all have been flipping out because the dog was lost, and nobody would have been actually walking the perimeter trying to look for anybody who would have been found by the person who found the dog. So it's like, why do I want to... I wouldn't do it in a situation where a dog's lost. I don't want to do it in a situation for my life either. If I... actually work with them and help them and keep them relaxed and jovial and joking around, they might actually not make that stressful error, saving my life, and they might actually be able to bring me back. So, yeah, like I was confident in their abilities, and from the time of the explosion being detonated, so like not even like it blew up and they were able to start beginning recovering. Yeah. From the point of the explosion, detonation of the vehicle, to the point a scalpel was actually touching my skin to do surgery on me was 12 minutes.
12 minutes?
Yeah, from beginning to. So, yeah, like, it's not Vietnam. There's not 3 days to get back to the aid station. We got vehicles. We in an urban environment with roads. So, yeah, I was, before I even was blown up, I didn't hate the person who may blow me up because I knew they were being manipulated. When I got blown up, I knew to keep my head, on my shoulders because literally I could help them save me. And then as I was going through the process, all the training that we had done was being used and applied and actually, effective. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't in that like, oh my God, I'm going to die, mindset. I was in a, all right, guys, maybe I'll get some ice cream out of this. I don't know. Like I might need more than Motrin though. Like that's the Army's normal way of handling. Oh, a broken leg, it's a Motrin.
What's that?
Huh? Motrin's like it's like Tylenol, but instead of for headaches, it's for like pain and stuff. It gets rid of inflammation. Okay. It's pretty much makes it so it helps it easier for your body to heal itself.
Okay. Okay.
But the Army likes to go for Motrin for everything. So you're like, I got a sprained ankle. Okay. Like Motrin. You're like, well, it might make it hurt a little less, but I still got a sprained ankle. They're like, well, all we can do is Motrin, keep walking. You're like, okay, so don't sit on the side of the road and heal. Pick up my 115-pound rucksack and keep moving. Yeah, Motrin don't know how to do it.
Do you know? Okay, so they got you in onto the operating table. What was it that they actually did? Like how do you? Like someone's just lost their legs.
In Iraq, they're trying to really only stabilize you so you don't die during your flight to Germany, because in Landstuhl, Germany is where we have our embassy hospital type area.
Germany is the closest.
Yeah, Landstuhl, Germany. So like because Baghdad International Hospital is for Iraqis, and it's like, even though it's their hospital, it's not where we would want to have our serious operations done. So when we're in Iraq, it's pretty much make sure the person is stable enough to be able to do small plane fighter helicopter flight to Germany. So I was blown up on the 17th, and by the 18th, I was already in Landstuhl, Germany, where the doctors were originally just making sure that they could save whatever limbs I had left, and then they have to stabilize you for the transatlantic flight, because when you're going from Iraq to Germany, there are potential stops to like do emergency stops, or you can stay low enough altitude to be able to, not have cabin pressure change so drastically. When you're doing a transatlantic flight from Germany to the States, you're traveling distance, so you could be stabilized for Iraq to Germany flight that's not stabilized for Germany to the American flight. So I was in Germany from the 18th to the 21st, and then on the 21st I was flown back to the States.
Okay, so from like the kind of 17th, 18th onwards, like those next few days, did the ability like to feel pain come back to you?
That was actually
Or did you remember anything from that?
that's what they call a medicated coma.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, they woke me up to call home for like a minute to talk to my family, let them know
Hello, I'm
I'm still
alive.
alive. Where they told my mother that I'd lost both my legs above the knee and my right arm at the elbow. So when I showed up with my arm still there, she was happy.
That was a win.
Yeah, but then they put me back under, and then they wake you up for the flight, and they keep you awake for the entire flight. And after being like in a medicated coma for 2 days, being awake for a 12-hour flight in a row that was hard.
Yeah.
that was difficult. But then as soon as I got to Walter Reed Hospital, before they even put me in a hospital room, they put me right into the operating room lines. So when I'm waiting to be operated on, within like the first hour that I'm there, there's two surgeons come and they want me to sign a piece of paper, authorization for the surgery. I was like, all right, cool. What does it say? They're like, oh, we could do the surgery. I was like, yeah, I get that. What surgery? They're like, oh, well, and then they try to talk over my head using Latin. They didn't know I took 4 years of Latin in a military high school by a guy who loved the Roman Empire. So I was pretty fluent in my Latin. I used to have to look at skeletal charts and just like name all the different bones because they're all Latin. So it had you learn prefixes and suffixes if you know what they are. But they were like, yeah, we're gonna take your second metacarpal and we're gonna the second metacarpal phalanges, and we're gonna rebuild the carpal scaffolding across the palm of the hand. And I was like, so you're going to cut my trigger finger off and use it to rebuild my palm because, like, it looks nice. And they're like, yeah, it'll make it look more like a regular hand, and it doesn't break up the outline of the hand, so you don't really notice it. And, like, every time I go to, like, make a trigger squeezing motion, that finger's not going to be there. And it's been something I've been doing for a long time. So I was like, I'm not thrilled about this, guys. I don't really want to sign this. And they're like, all right, well, we'll come back later when you're like more clear of mind. And it came back, and they're like, you gonna sign it yet? And I was like, no, I've got more faith and confidence in you guys than you can ever imagine to do something better than what you brought me last time. So they like finally came back, and they're like, all right, we're gonna do something that's only temporary. It's gonna be short term. It's only gonna be long enough until you are clear enough of mind to know that this operation has to be done. And that's the end of the story. Because I never went back. And it's still the same way today. That temporary surgery for a super short period of time was the one that they fixed my hand with.
Oh, really?
So I still have all my fingers.
Huh.
I get a big metal plate. That's a 6-inch metal plate that's holding my hand together with different pins and screws. And you'd be like, oh, well, is that fragile? Well, not during my Muay Thai training that I was doing for years, and my jiu-jitsu training that I'm still doing today. And like I fall down all the time and have to punch the ground to stop myself from getting my face smashed into the ground. And like, yeah, I scrape my knuckles up where they're bloody a lot from maybe falling on concrete and catching myself with my knuckles. But yeah, like it's still fine.
You never have to have any metal replaced or nothing like that?
Not in the last 14 years.
Wow. I okay.
Thought I put that on silent. That's why I took that off before.
Jesus, wow. My God. Oh, okay. So, even in like those few days, kind of before you got to America, was there, what I guess you hear about people when they get like bad news, you know, like shocking news, they'll almost go into a like a denial or something about. But was there anything like that where your legs was there days when you're like, I can't believe this happened?
From the first sec. All right, so like I got blown up. I did a whole thing with the surgeons like downstairs, and like my family was at the hospital, but they didn't see me yet, so they moved me up into a hospital room, and I was there for like a couple minutes before they brought my family in to like see me for the first time, and within the few minutes I was there, I was already just looking around, watching them what they were doing. So like I learned pretty much all the buttons on the walls and stuff. And my mom comes in. This is the first time she's seen me since I've been back from Iraq. She hadn't seen me more than a few days when I was in between Afghanistan and Iraq. So she hasn't seen me in like years, really. Yeah. It's the first time she's seen her son. She leans over and she's like, "Is there anything I could do to make you feel comfortable?" I said, "Yeah, Mom. Can you just get the light switch? It's that switch over there on the wall. Just the lights are in my eyes." And she flips the switch, and I start going, my oxygen, I can't breathe, my oxygen, where'd my oxygen go? And she starts panicking, flipping all the buttons, and I'm like, I'm laughing so hard, I can't even tell her I'm joking, and it looks like you're joking when you're laughing, so like she's panicking even more, and my family behind her got it. They got it instantly. They saw me turn beet red laughing, and they just knew. Like my mom didn't catch it for like 10 seconds, which is an incredibly long time when you're panicking. And then she realized I was laughing, and she just instantly punched me in my one good arm. My only arm that wasn't blown up all over the place, and she just welched me in the arm. And I was like, all right, we're good. We're on the same page. And then my family almost got kicked out multiple times from the hospital because we were laughing too loud. Jeez. And, like, nurses would come in and be like, do you guys not realize that there's family members dealing with traumatically injured family members in other rooms right next to you? And my mom's like, what about my son? He's got 4 wound vacs out of 3 limbs right now. And they're like, he's laughing. But they're like, yeah, it's not everybody's reaction.
True.
But, you know, it's...
I was gonna. It does sound to me like a sense of humor has really helped you from then on.
I think... all right, so, and getting around to a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now, too, like, I'm a big advocate for post-traumatic growth, which everybody knows about post-traumatic stress. Yeah. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTS, post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress, like, whatever they want to call it now. People know that when they go through a very stressful event, and it could be they've either witnessed somebody else being catastrophically injured, or they've gone through their own catastrophic injury. Post-traumatic stress is a negative reaction to that kind of event, where that stress becomes a trigger for you later in life, and you have to cope with it. Post-traumatic growth is an equal opportunity to result from a traumatic experience, where if you go through being, like, you know, kidnapped and held in a confinement, and all of a sudden you're rescued, you're like, well, you were on the way to buy groceries, complaining about, you know, having to do schoolwork, and then that happened, and then, like, now you're like, not only am I alive, I'm not even being, like, tortured right now. Like, my life is great compared to that. And so, like, if you survive, you know, something that, for an example, obviously in that, but if you survive traumatic experience, you could be as grateful, you know, for your circumstances as you could be stressed out by them. So the post-traumatic growth, I believe, is the actual diagnosis, and the humor and comedy is the symptom of it. The post-traumatic growth is really my reaction that I had from getting blown up, and I think because of confidence in my peers in the military, knowing that the hospital and doctors were going to be trying to do everything to get me back, you know, on my feet, no matter if they were prosthetic or the ones I was born with, and knowing that my family was there. My older sister, who, you know, just finished being an assistant district attorney for Suffolk County for a few years, had just started working at a private law firm for her, you know, her career, and then instantly just was like, nah, for 2 months, I got to go be with my brother, and just stayed at the hospital with me for like 2 months. And I'm pretty sure her law firm was like, we understand, but
2 months?
That's a lot of time. And she's like, yeah, no. And it's not an ask. It's like, I'm letting you know. So that's my family supported me. So, like, having that gave me the ability to have post-traumatic growth. The post-traumatic growth was what caused me to be able to have a lighthearted sense of humor and be able to to cope with the things that I was going through, even when I wasn't happy.
Right.
I still kind of was hoping it could be better, even if I wasn't in the best at the time.
I see. I see. Can you talk to me a little bit about the process of like, I guess not learning how to walk again, but gaining the ability to
Oh,
do it.
it's all about learning how to walk again.
Yeah.
Because and it's also now like walking is dependent on technology. So the iPhone 1 just wasn't an iPhone 1. It was called an iPhone back in the day. The iPhone just came out, and my sister wanted me to be able to use the internet in the hospital. So she got an iPhone for me in like the first few days I was there. So I've had an iPhone at the same time they first came out, and I got prosthetic legs around the same time. So I've been able to watch the process of the evolution of the iPhone at the same time and watch the process of the evolution of computers and prosthetics. And I guess say prosthetics are outpacing iPhones, by a mile.
Really, I thought you were
Um,
going to say the other way around.
like these legs are the legs I had originally they have a hydraulic press in them. They have a computer and they have battery. They have to be charged. All that stuff. These
Yeah.
legs I have on right now are $130,000 individually. So yeah, this is $260, $260,000. I'm wearing right now. And the first set of legs I had, that computer would only really be able to receive a message from your toe that you were putting pressure on it, and it would be able to release the hydraulic so that your knee could bend, and then it would pump the hydraulic again to swing your leg out, and you would get a gait, and you'd have to learn how to walk with the computerized gait. So, it's a little bit of a learning process. At the same time, the technology at that point was like a regular iPhone. So, if you were not taking a step, but it's called stance flexion. If you were standing still and you just wanted to flex a knee to kind of shift your weight because you just were on one leg for too long, you might also be putting pressure on your toe. And if you're shifting weight and putting pressure on your toe and the leg thinks you're taking a step, it's going to release your knee. And if you're releasing your knee while shifting weight, you're just going to go right down. You're going to fall right out of the sky like a ton of bricks. So I used to introduce myself to people, give them my name, and be like, disclaimer, I'm going to fall. Don't worry. You don't got to help me. I'll be up before you even bend over. I'm just letting you know, don't panic when I hit the ground really hard because I got used to it. But now these legs have stance flexion in them. So not only does it know the difference between if I'm in an elevator standing up against a wall and I just want to bend my knees slightly and put my back up against the wall and rest, it'll only give me that little bit and know just to keep my knees tense. If I want it, instead of leaning up against a wall, just crouch a little bit, I can crouch lower, and it knows I don't have any back support. So it knows it has to let me have a larger bend, but it also knows where to stop for me to be able to squat. And then it's this set of legs actually has an app on my phone with 30 different types of preset programming, including kickboxing, skateboarding, surfing, bike riding, um, lifting heavy packages, because when you're carrying heavy packages, you got to kind of have a wider stance and kick your legs out while you're walking. Right. So, and then like of those 30, I get to pick six different ones that I keep in my app on my phone at any time, and I can instantly pull out my phone. It connects through Bluetooth and change the app and automatically be prepared for any kind of activity I want, as well as having these legs have intuitive design. So they learn from me using them. And then while I'm using them, feeling them learning stuff, I can actually lean more into doing other stuff. Like, metaphorically and literally, I can lean further into like relaxing up against a wall if the leg knows more and more about when I'm going to be stopping or how much pressure I'm putting on the knee.
And how you do it.
So yeah, it was learning how to use them, but they are definitely usable even more now than ever.
Are they like the first set you got since then, or how many?
This is probably the fifth set of legs that I have.
Fifth.
Sixth if you count this one, because I have another set identical to these. But that app that I talked about was an update.
Okay.
And like instead of updating the legs, they had to update the entire system.
Okay.
So I got a whole new set of the same exact legs, just with a different program.
Oh.
But yeah, so I probably got 6 sets of legs, but it's really the sockets, the part that holds the leg on the body, that's as important, but often not as focused on. So it's great that you can have a bunch of engineers, with education and training, be able to construct a device to do whatever they wanted to do. They built spaceships, that have gone out, to the moon. You can build a computer to do remarkable things, but if you can't have a person use that thing, it really doesn't matter, So with the leg, it's got to be attached to the body to where it stays on. And the original sockets I had, and it has to fit perfectly to your leg, or if you sweat a little bit, it'll slide off because it's heavy, and it's underneath you. So the pendulum swing is going to be constantly putting force to try to pull it off your leg. So it has to be held on by a vacuum suction. And to put them on, you have to get your leg perfectly in this hard socketed thing when your leg is a squishy meat. And you got to get it in where it stays in. And you can't have any gaps on the inside because you get like hickeys on your legs if there's a vacuum on the inside of the socket. And you're constantly pulling pressure on it, so you can mess up your skin. So I've went through many different iterations. And I work closely with Sue in Hanger Clinic. It's a prosthetics lab in Rockville Center. And Sue is one of the greatest people I could have ever asked to be a prosthetist, because she goes down to the beach with me in Long Beach when I'm surfing and will work with me on the beach how to set my legs up to be better at surfing. If I come in and say, Sue, I was skateboarding over the weekend and I broke my leg in half, she's not going to say, oh, why were you skateboarding? She's going to say, oh my God, how quickly can we get you a new leg? Because like she wants to get me back on a skateboard. So I'm like, I would rather have that in my my caregivers than fear for my safety or anything like that.
Do you like I guess like what percentage of the time do you actually have the legs on, or do you
during the day? Pretty much take my legs off when I go to bed, and I put them on when I get out of bed, because sleeping in them is uncomfortable.
I can imagine.
But doing anything else during the day without them on has become uncomfortable, because like if I have, and these aren't just the only set of legs I have, in the 6 sets of legs I've had have only been my walking legs. So the walking legs I have for going to the office, for going grocery shopping, for going to a barbecue, I'll wear these legs because they're longer and I can walk around on them. Sure. I have other legs that are for surfing that are just little platforms that go right on the bottom of my sockets. So when I stand up, I'm only like 3.5 feet tall, because I'm starting the ground at my thigh, which is great for me because my dogs are big enough for me to be able to reach them without having to bend over. And when I'm, with my nieces that are 6 and 8 years old, and I'm running around with them and their friends, and I'm looking at them in eye level, they actually, I see a huge difference when I have those feet on and I'm playing with kids. They look at me like as a person. And I put these legs on and I stand next to them, and instantly they're no longer like the person. They're like a kid, and they're like looking up at me like at a dog. I'm like, you can't play that game with me, kid. I just saw you being way smarter than that, like when I wasn't as tall as this. But those legs, I also, I roll. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So those legs give me the ability to actually have lower center of gravity. I work out in those legs. Then I also have extensions to where when I was doing Muay Thai, I wanted to be able to stand up and have, a proper stance and be able to throw kicks and elbows and stuff. So I'd have the extensions that give me more height off the ground. So I was only like 5'6", but I was 5'6" with legs to where I could be stable on them. They don't bend, so I can really put the core strength into staying up and then really be able to throw legs and stuff.
I've done a bit of Muay Thai myself. You can like land a kick with the leg itself.
Oh yeah. These I can, even though they're heavy, I can't land a great kick with these, but I wouldn't go into, all right, so if I had the perfect setup for having to use Muay Thai in a fight, I would hope to be in my extensions with my surfing feet on, because they would give me the most amount of stability, and because the feet are platforms, I could really rotate into the kick and get my hips to actually move, and then land that foot to the side of me again to be able to prepare for a counterattack. And when I do training like that, I joke around when I'm not training. When I'm training, I don't joke around. So I take it pretty seriously. And
good for you.
if I wasn't able to do it at a competitive level, I'm not even sure I'd be able to stick with it. But I could definitely compete.
Nice one. Do you prefer, just out of interest, do you prefer Thai or Jiu-Jitsu?
Like, all right, so I always wanted to consider myself a mixed martial artist,
Okay.
and to do that, you got to have more than one martial art.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason I chose Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was strategic because of prosthetics. I don't want to have a power side. I don't want to have a sideways facing stance with a low profile to the enemy and like, a jab and a haymaker because I can't rotate on my knees like that because you have to rotate sideways. So I chose Muay Thai standing up because you square your hips with the person you're facing.
It's certainly a lot more square.
It's meant for knife
boxing,
fighting. So it's like you keep all your arteries, on the inside and you keep your elbows up. And for me, I got carbon fiber armor up to my hip. And I got my elbow starting at my hip to my jaw, and then I got my head down. So it literally 360 degrees, and it keeps everybody, facing forward that I want to fight in that stance.
Yeah.
And as soon as it becomes a close fight, and you take it to the ground, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is taking fights to the ground and winning them quickly. Like that's so like my whole idea is if I ever have to get into a fight, I need to square up face to face, with equal sides. I need to be able to have protection and take advantage of the prosthetics, and then be able to take a fight to the ground and end it.
Choke him out or something.
Yeah.
Jeez, yeah, good man. The actual 2 years of rehab and learning, like did it? Would you say it took 2 years to kind of master walking with them, or?
Like I'd say a year of that was actually a problem with paperwork more than anything.
Really?
I was supposed to get out after probably about 14 months or 16 months being there, but it wound up taking about 2 years because my file was lost by the VA when they were out processing me. So I had to do this like 8-month process twice to get out of the military. But I would say about the first year to 14 months was doing appointments. The first 3 months I was in a hospital bed in the hospital. After the first 3 months, they have this building called the Malone House at Walter Reed. Walter Reed's actually in Maryland now, so I don't know if they have different places. But when I was there, it was like a hotel, and all of the wounded soldiers were staying at this like hotel on campus. So it wasn't an actual hotel; it just looked like a hotel on campus, and or on base. And so it was close enough to the hospital. So once you were out of the hospital doing outpatient, you still had like 8-9 appointments a day of different doctors you had to go through. Still only 3 months from being blown up in in Iraq and war, so you still got a lot of doctor visits and stuff. And then after the first few months, you start learning how to use prosthetics, which the way I did it probably wasn't the best way to do it. Definitely not recommended, I would say, by any medical professional, but they gave me my legs and they let me use them once, right? And I loved it. I was like, I want to get on these legs. I want to be able to learn how to use them. And they're like, all right, well, we're going to keep them here, though, and you got to come here to learn how to use them. I was like, no, I want to keep them. They're like, no. You got to learn how to use them here first. And I was like, all right, well, my sister's 15th birthday is this weekend. And I was like, you can't tell me a guy with, jeans on prosthetic legs isn't less weird for 15-year-olds than a guy with no legs at all. And they're like, we can understand that. We'll let you borrow the legs for your sister's birthday. We want them back here Monday. You learn how to use them. So like a month later, I came back. They're like, where the legs been? Where the legs been at? I'm like, all right, learn how to use them in the Malone House. I figured it'd be easier for me to do it. And like I left the room and I took a step and I fell. And I got up and I took 3 steps and fell. But then I got up and I was able to get to 10 steps. But then I fell. I was like, and that got me outside. And then I came back inside. And I was able to make it all the way back in without falling. And I fell when I got to the room. So then I got up the next day, and I didn't fall until halfway through the day. So, I fell a lot in the beginning.
Fair enough.
I also learned, relatively quickly without... at the time, I also still had, a giant metal device holding my entire arm together.
Could you use your hand at the time?
Oh, no.
Right.
There was a giant metal halo around my entire forearm, which are, 2 circular metal discs. They're held together by metal bars, and they're all drilled into different bones in your arm, holding the structure together. And I'd use that to brace my fall when I was learning how to use my legs because it was big and it was metal. So I was like, I could fall on that. But doctors probably
not recommended.
Not recommended, not recommended at all.
Fair enough. Okay. I guess I was like the physical side. You hear a lot. You hear a lot about ex-military people having and we touched on it briefly, but having like PTSD or anxiety or kind of like non-physical issues.
Yeah.
Was that something that you felt?
I I myself wasn't dealing with personal mental scars and mental anguish. I did have a flashback once while I was actually at Walter Reed, and it was, I'm thankful for the experience. At the same time, like I was able to talk myself out of it, because I was in the MATC, which is this training place at the hospital for you to do small physical activities to be able to start working muscles up again and stuff. And it was just had been, it was still really early on. So this is still like, I'm still in the hospital. I've been blown up a month, ago. And I'm in the hospital trying to put weights on my limbs so I could do crunches. And they're like, nah, don't strap weights to yourself yet. Just try to do the crunches. And I'm like, nah, get 30 pounds each limb. They're like, no. So I was always trying to push myself farther, and I always working with them and stuff. But it was just one time where I think my mom was with me at the time, but she got up to grab something, and then the person that's the trainer was working with me had also gotten up and was going to get something. And it was just like an instance where all of a sudden I was right by myself, and I was sitting in the same position I would have been sitting if I was in a truck still. And then I looked down, and my legs were just meat, just shredded meat. And I looked at my hands, and my arm was just shredded meat, like identical when I finally saw him, the first day I got blown up. And I'm in the hospital, looking down at my limbs and looking at frayed skin and stuff. And my heart starts racing, my chest feels like it's about to explode. And I'm like, holy shit, I got blown up. I've just been blown up. And I was like, well, it's not the first time. I was like, I did this once before. Didn't end so horribly the first time. So I was like, maybe I can get through it this time. And I was like, wait, I already been through this. And when I would look up, I would see I was in the MATC. I would see my mom. I'd see the person who was working with me where they were across the room. But then I'd look down, and my heart would start pounding again, and I would see my limbs all shredded. And I was like, well, this is what I've recovered from. This is what I've been through. This is what I had to deal with. And I'm sitting here saying, I already did this. I'm already cracking jokes in my own, trauma. So I'm literally joshing on myself. And, I was able to cope with that. And since that experience, it was really the worst kind of mental trauma I had to deal with personally. But I'll tell you, my own personal trauma began as a veteran, working with people like Kevin Hertel, who he set up the SAR flag. SAR flags for suicide awareness and remembrance because of veterans that sadly.
I've heard it's quite prominent.
Yeah, I'm doing with Donna Zephyrin and Frank Lombardi from IGHL and Alex Roman, who's a professional friend of mine, who he's a money manager. We're doing an event, a 22-mile kayak from Connecticut to Port Jeff, Long Island. And it's 22 miles for recognition of the 22 veterans that commit suicide a day in the United States.
A day? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Wow.
And which is above the national averages of equivalent population size. So the SAR flag is also something that Kevin Hertel, a friend of mine, has been working to get in the Congress and flown next to the POW MIA flag, because prisoner of war and mission in action are possible traumas that families have to deal with, but suicide awareness and remembrance is as powerful a negative thing as those things are. So
it just doesn't happen on the battle on the place itself.
It's the traumas that follow you at home that people really have to deal with. And volunteering as much time as I can to be able to work with these organizations. And a friend of mine, Pat Donahue, who he was in the Army, combat arms guy, and then got a law degree and started Project 9 Line, which is a 501c3 charitable organization. They have a comedy tour club that they do comedy classes to educate people, and they have their own comedy troupe. They have their own band where they rock. They absolutely play great, rock music and stuff. And they, all veterans, and they veteran outreach in communities. And ever since I've been going to events and being a veteran advocate and supporting the community, people will come up to me all the time and say, "Hey, I know you're busy, but there's this person I know they really, really need somebody to talk to. Could you reach out to them?" And I do as much as I can to everybody that I really can talk to, and just say like, "Hey, you got people who care for you. I don't know you yet, but I just got to speak with one of those people, and you're a lucky person to have people who care for you." So I just wanted to, give them my gratitude by reaching out to you and let you know that I'm here if you need anything. But doing that leads you to a lot of relationships that don't have bright, cheery endings, and that stuff can really pile up on you. And to give you the, what could I have done different? What could I have done better? Did I do something that not only could have prevented it, but did, God forbid, did I cause this to be further worse for the person? Because sometimes the best intent and the most heartfelt of statements can be the biggest insult that drags somebody down, and you'd never know if it was something that really affected them.
It could be read totally different. But
Yeah. So it's like, and just small comments too, like just accidentally saying what you mean, but like in a way that's not taken the same way. I'll give you an example. My mom hates because I bring it up as an example of how things could be taken out of context. When I graduated college after the Army, like I'd already gotten a Series 7, I'd already gotten a Series 66. I was an independent investment advisor with my own business, and as post being in military, and have already been deployed to countries in Iraq and stuff. But then I wanted to go to college while I'd already started a career. So I went to college at night, and like I got my degree in business administration and marketing while still working, as an advisor. My mom's so thrilled and happy. She's like, "I never thought you were, gonna go to college and graduate." I was like, "Oh, thanks, Mom. You didn't think I was smart enough to graduate college?" She's like, "What? No, like that." She did not mean it that way, but she just wanted to say how happy she was that I graduated college. She never thought she'd be there standing with me that day. Like, to her, she wanted to support me, like, in the best she could. At the same, like, I could have taken that out of context, but thankfully I was just ribbing on her and I used it as an example. But it's, if you're talking to people who the suicide awareness and remembrance is, trying to direct their attention towards, and then you can't ask that person who's gone, what was it that got them there, because they're gone. So it's like I was speaking to the father of somebody who did sadly wind up ending their own life through drug abuse and that way, but it's suicide nonetheless.
It's kind of doing it slowly.
Yeah, when you're getting high, not hoping to get stoned, but you're getting high hoping that you don't wake up, you're probably not doing it for chemical reasons. You're probably doing it for other reasons. But he'd sadly passed away, and I was talking to his father, and like who I didn't even know was his father. We were just in the service in like a backyard party, like not party, a backyard bringing together and community and stuff. And I was just talking with people, and I'm talking with a gentleman, and he said it was really something he could never understand, and he felt so horrible that he could never understand what a person was going through that ended their life. And I said, well, yeah, like that's something that nobody other than the person who takes their own life could ever understand, because you got to be at the point where you're like, this is not going to fail. This is going to work, and I'm going to not wake up from this. And that's the person who you can never ask why. You can never get that final thing, because sometimes people can be going through life like seemingly perfectly fine, and then they wind up taking their life, and you're like, you were on recovery, you were on the mend, you were doing stuff, you started a relationship. What got you to the point that you entered that state so bad again that you just couldn't come back out of it? And those are the people that you can never find out why. So it's really trying to prevent people from getting to that position. You know.
Yeah. Can you tell us about any of the other? I know you're involved in other groups that kind of help veterans and so on.
Yeah, not just veterans too, because I love military. I love the veteran community, and I probably wouldn't. I probably would be completely understood in this comment by all the veterans and military guys. I love them. Most of them can take care of themselves. Most of them can do their own thing. So like, I want to support the community. Most of the guys don't need like support. They want to support and be a community. So we're a supportive community for the communities we're in, and trying to go further than that. So I love working with kids that when I was a kid in South Carolina and then moving to New York, coming from a very, very poor background, and really not having any knowledge of the wider world, but then now looking back as an adult, knowing my experiences and knowing where I've been and the things that people could do no matter where they start from. I love helping groups of kids that are coming out of difficult situations and really becoming independent individuals in their own right. For example, the Lim Kind Foundation is an organization that their beneficiaries are kids that were either born or have lost limbs early in life. Wow. So if you're a kid and were in a car accident in a car seat, but you don't have an arm now, or if you were born and you have, your legs, you were born with a congenital defect where your feet didn't develop, you may not have been blown up in war, but you're still a kid who now you got to deal with your whole life without a limb. So Scoot and Surf is a surf camp that's in Long Beach. They also have Surf for All, which is their 501c3 foundation. So Scoot and Surf and Surf for All will partner with organizations like Limb Kind Foundation. So the Limb Kind Foundation can get the kids with limb loss and or congenital defects, bring them to the beach where the Surf for All surf camp can bring them out and teach them that, maybe they don't have a leg, but they can still surf on the shore. And
Might have to do it differently, but you can still do it.
And how many people are they going to talk to for the rest of their life when they're like, I surfed, and people will be like, you surf? How is it surfing? I've never been surfing. And you're like, well, you could. You just never had a reason to. But, like, the organizations are bringing the kids out there, giving them a reason to, giving them that, stuff. So, like, I really, really love doing events like that. And really, one of the should knock the camera. But like one of the reasons why I was always a proud military soldier. The reason I was always proud of being in my military service is that because the communities that I come from and because the United States, like, we're not the best everything, and not everything is great. We're not always led by the strongest of personalities or characters, but at the same time, like, we all kind of source our leadership from within our groups. It's not a lifelong presidency. It's not a 30-year person in the States, but I'm sorry, I'm yelling.
No, right.
Hey guys. Sorry, you're being picked up over here. Sorry. Sorry about that.
No, right.
Like, I love my family and community, like I said, but because you have people involved in things, there's always distractions.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's what you got to put up with when you work with people. But so like one of the reasons I was always proud of my military service was because I was proud of my country and my family. And like, even though we could have all the faults, I can look at every other country in the world without any kind of with open eyes, without any kind of hatred for political reasons, for geographic reasons, for any kind of creed or anything like that. Just I understand why the Chinese government works in China, and I can understand why the Russian government works in Russia, and I can understand why Europe's governments work in their countries, and I can understand what works here. And I think that our country and our culture have really inspired an individual responsibility to be a good community member. as opposed to making the community make a mold for each individual.
Right.
So, in each individual being a good community member means that they're strong individually, so they're independent, but then they're also strong culturally, so we're strong interdependent. And coming back to the community, anytime I work with Limkind Foundation with the Surf for All surf camp, or I see Sue from Hanger Clinic down on the beach with me, learning how to surf for the camp, or doing the 22-mile kayak across the Long Island Sound for veteran suicide awareness and the SAR flag. Anytime we're doing an event with the Wounded Warrior Project, or going down and doing a fishing trip with the Tight Lines fishing trip in South New Jersey, doing all these events, it's like you really see like the veteran community isn't the thing being affected. It's the people in the veteran community's interactions that are being affected. So it's like all the civilians that are supporting the foundations and the events, and all the veterans that are coming out and being able to go on these fishing trips with people that have boats and stuff, and being able to do surfing and doing kayaking and stuff. Coming to the events, it's the interactions between those veterans in the military and the civilians and communities they served, that they still want to feel like they're serving, that, you know, they come out to the events. And that's why I like what I'm doing now.
Good. I wanted to ask you, I guess you're about 15 years since you're
yeah.
Okay, so in those 15 years, do you feel like, I don't know whose kind of responsibility is the U.S. government, U.S. Army, do you feel like you've gotten the support, be it financial or otherwise, from them?
Yes, I do. I do want to qualify that with saying that I'm clearly 100% physically disabled from combat. So, like, I was blown up in Iraq in an active Army patrol. So 100% medical and dental for the rest of my life. So I've been covered and I felt like I've been covered as best as could be by the VA, the Veteran Administration, by the federal government, by the military. I felt like I've been able to get what I need. On the other hand, I do work with a lot of veterans that are between 30 and 70% disabled, either from a limb loss below the knee, or from PTSD or sleep apnea from breathing in all the toxic fumes from the burn barrels, and now you can't breathe when you sleep. And there's one guy I talked to with he did a sleep study, and they said 22 different times he stopped breathing for more than 30 seconds. He's like, how much brain damage are you getting stopping breathing
Oxygen,
that often?
Oxygen,
And you're sleeping, and your body's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna work for a good half minute. 22 times in the same night too. Like, that's gotta be taken care of.
Direct result of his military work.
But it won't give you 100%, combat disability coverage. So if you're only 50% disabled, and you're having sleep apnea so bad that you stop breathing for more than 30 seconds 22 times in a night, the services you get might not be sufficient to help recover. So anytime there are gaps in coverage like that, I try to be a veteran advocate with groups like Project Nine Line and Pat Donahue and Kevin Hertel and even the SCR flag and their group, and getting veterans the services when it's not clear that they need them or deserve them or will be benefited by them. Getting that information to get the VA to actually be able to offer the services is something that's still an ongoing fight.
Very good. Can you talk to me a small bit about I suppose since college you were in the military, that was your profession and life up until the end of it. So coming back and getting I guess like an ordinary type job and a life that it's not a life being deployed out in is there a big adjustment period?
Well, I mean, people are who they are, right? So like no matter like what kind of job I think a person does, they're still that person doing the job, right? It's like when I came back, I originally volunteered for an animal shelter because I just got a dog. I like working with animals, and a town supervisor asked me to do a veteran to work program, or like that he was trying to set up.
Okay.
So I was the first person that he asked, and I got any town job I wanted. I was like, I work at the animal shelter. That's all I really want to do. And while I was working at the animal shelter, I wound up agreeing to do a 110-mile bike ride with this person who invited me. They heard about me from a parade I was in or something. And it's still early on. It's like 2012. So I've been home for like 2 years, maybe a little bit less.
Okay.
And I agreed to do this bike ride. So I got to show up in East Merches at this person, Lon Dolber's house. And the first weekend, there was like 7 people that showed up that he invited. The second weekend, we did a practice ride for a 110-mile bike ride that I agreed to. And there was only like 2 of us there. And like the 2 of us would show up for like 2 or 3 weekends. But then after that, like I only showed up.
Right.
So then by the time the event actually came around, I was just showing up with this guy, Lon. We became friends and bike riding buddies. And I mean, like we went round up riding together almost every weekend for like 7 years after that. But for this first event, we did the 110-mile bike ride, and became friends. And he was like, I'm also a bassist in a band. In a classic rock band at the time. He's a bassist in a Motown band now. That Motown band, they got their own YouTube channel if you want to look them up.
That Motown band.
That Motown band, they're great.
We'll put a link.
But I appreciate it. But like, so like Lon, my bike riding friend that I've done like a bike riding event with, and he asked me to, if I want to go to a couple of shows. So I go to shows, and he's a bassist, in a rock band, and he's like, hey, you seem like a pretty smart guy. Maybe you want to try working at the company I work at, American Portfolios. So like, that's cool. I wouldn't mind working at a company that had a culture that was like, that he fit into. So he's like, yeah, go, to the building, this is the address, go to the 5th floor and, talk to Marianne at the desk and tell him that you're looking for like an interview. And I was like, all right. So, next Monday, went up to the office, and it's like, I don't know what department he works in, but there's somebody here, Lon Dolber, that I know that said I should come in for an interview. I said, who said you? His name's Lon Dolber. I don't know where he works. I said, honey, it's his company.
Oh, go ahead.
He started the company in 2001, and he's the CEO. If he told you to come in for an interview, so we're just looking for a job for you. We're not looking to see if you want to get hired. We're just looking for where you're going now. I was like, oh, I didn't. Okay. He never told me he was the CEO. He never told me he was anything but a bike riding bassist player. And, he thought I should come and ask, so I did. Nice. But he gave me the opportunity to sit on my thumbs at home and not do anything with my life, and he gave me the opportunity to come in and try something. So I started working in compliance department, and I worked there for a year, and I was like, I want to get my independent license because...
To do what exactly?
My independent investment license, which means that I was working in compliance. So American Portfolios has 850 advisors, investment advisors across all 50 states. And they're independently licensed. So we're all independently licensed. I only work for my clients. I get paid by my clients' accounts, and I answer to my clients' accounts. But there's nobody I'm trying to make money for other than them. American Portfolios will take a percentage of the fees that I get from my clients. Right. But that comes out of the fees I collect for myself, not from like anything else. So like, I wanted to be independent. I don't want to work for a wirehouse and try to sell, mutual funds to people for the company. If somebody needs a mutual fund, I want them to have it because it's best for their investments. Okay. And working in compliance, you're an employee, so you're W-2 paid employee, work 9 to 5. As a Remy, what are you doing? As a independent investment advisor, I'd be able to work with clients and actually tailor their individual needs to what I would like, what I advise would be best for them. So if you really take my time in the Army, my job as an infantry soldier was to know that I had only a certain amount of resources, including human life, very valuable, but also in a mission and a goal that we had to complete for the better of, everybody. How much life are we willing to risk to make sure that we accomplish our mission and our goals? Okay. And I'm talking to my clients today the same exact way. I'm like, this is your future self. So your soldiers are your 60s, your 70s, your 80s. Those are strangers to you now. Just as much as the Iraqis or Afghans are strangers to me, your future self is a stranger to you. But what are you going to risk now to sacrifice to be able to say that their lives are going to be better in the future? And what investments can we put you in to get you there? It's the same as like, do you need bullets or bags of flour? Because bags of flour will win you many more friends, but bullets will protect them. So you gotta do the measurements, and you gotta weigh out the same type of stuff today in investments. So it's I really look at it the same way. Like I am I am just as cautious with the life of soldiers as I am with the future life of my clients, and I am just as invested in getting a job done for the Army as I am for American portfolios. So.
Yeah. Very good. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? I think I asked you just about everything I wanted to, but if there was something, anything you wanted to mention.
There are, there's always great things going on in a community, and there's always great events where if you can't like financially give money to fundraising and stuff, if you volunteer your time, you'll meet a lot of great people, and really, I'm just thankful that America's such a great place to live that I can go and be deployed and catastrophically injured and still not even sweat it because I'm like, hey, I'm representing, my people, so like I want to do the best I can. So yeah, I'm really grateful for, and also before I forget, like the most important thing, this house that we're doing this interview.
Sorry,
I completely forget too because
excuse me.
like this house has become such a crucial part of my life,
Yeah.
and like it really is completely designed for me to be able to not just live independently, but to be able to excel and like prosper on a solid foundation. And the Tunnel to Towers, the Steven Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation, I am so grateful for everything that they've done. They've built this house for me. They build houses for veterans across the country. They pay if a soldier or if a police officer or firefighter dies in the line of duty, their families' mortgages are paid. Their families, their families' kids are going to go to school and have money. They're not going to be, up a creek without a paddle because the income person who is bringing money home from the fire department sadly died in the fire. They don't want the family to be left off. So, like, they make sure they follow up with, everybody, like, anything like that.
Good.
But it's really Steven Siller's story that like I really try to preach as much as I can as soon as I learned it. Steven Siller was the youngest of 8 siblings, and he was a father of 5. So he's the youngest of 8, father of 5. Lost his parents both, very short period of time when he was still a few years old. So he's raised by his siblings. And he was a firefighter and, great dad. And there's wonderful pictures of him with his family. And on September 11th, 2001, he got off duty and was going home to play golf with his brothers in Staten Island where he lived when he got the call that the first tower had been hit. So he instantly, after having already been off his shift and clocking off, went to his firehouse, and they had left already and locked the doors. So he broke a window. And he unlocked the door, and he went in and got his gear, threw it in his car, and then he drove to the battery tunnel. And they said, you can't go anywhere. There's nobody going in through the tunnels or bridges. Everything's locked down. So he said, okay. And he parked his car. He put on all 60 pounds of his gear. And he said, don't worry, I'll jog. And he jogged like 5 kilometers through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel all the way to the tower. And he checked in with his team, which were the tip of the spear.
Oh, they were
the first guys in the building. And they never even found their truck.
Jeez.
They haven't found a single body of anybody in his unit, and they didn't even find the entire fire truck has never been found. And it was right under the building. So, yeah, but his siblings, knowing his sacrifice, since the first year, 2002, when Giuliani was mayor at the time, and they came to him and they're like, we want to do a 5K retracing Steven Siller's steps through the tunnel, into the World Trade Center area. Giuliani originally was like, no. Like, we just got attacked as a country a year ago. Thousands of people lost their lives. The security we have this September 11th, they're like, there's no way that we could do a 5K run through the city. and they told him Steven Siller's story, and he's like, "There is no way we're not doing a 5K run through this city, and we're doing it this year." And he was on board, and since the first year, they've done a 5K through Manhattan every single year, and they have a concert at the end of it now. And yes, like more than 3,000 people lost their lives in the attack on 9/11, but since then, hundreds of thousands of people probably come together during that event alone, learning Steven Siller's story, learning what the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is doing and what they're all about, seeing, all of his siblings being board members of the foundation and coming together, and then seeing the benefit of the projects that they do and how much they help people. It's a type of event you go to where you can see, grown men who have been through the worst hells that war can ever throw at them. They've been through traumas in their life returning home, and their biggest, toughest, like men, grizzly men, not even wiping the tears away from their face, crying like babies at these events, because when you see something that real heartfelt, it just really hits you into the core. But it's something that I'd like to say thank you to them, as well as pretty much all the organizations. But I want to make sure I said that before.
No, very good. Very good. I think on that note, if there's nothing else. Oh, sorry. Where can people, like social media wise, where can people find you?
You can find most of my social media accounts by just looking for Christopher Levi on Facebook, or my Instagram handle is the Legless Leg Ranger.
Okay.
So normally it's Airborne Ranger, but I was light infantry, so they didn't really care about Airborne school. They put it after Ranger school. I broke my leg, or my foot. I got a couple of hairline fractures in my foot with 5 days left of Ranger school.
Oh, really?
And in Ranger school, it doesn't matter if you get bitten by a poisonous snake. Doesn't matter if you get chewed on by an alligator. Doesn't matter if you get a freaking limb ripped off by a lion. If you're injured, you day one, or you get out of the school. If you're hurt, get back in line. Get back in the formation. So like, I got bitten by a poisonous snake. They're like, "Are you hurt or injured?" "I'm hurt for now." "I'll just keep walking on it, until your leg starts turning black, and if you graduate, you graduate." So like, my leg literally was black from the knee down, from all the dead blood pooling up in my leg, and I walked on it for 5 days, until I graduated, doing regular patrols. So I got to Airborne school. They were like, "No way, we're not letting you jump out of a plane with that leg." So I got sent home without without Airborne. In the Army, you call that a leg, because you don't have Airborne. You got a Ranger tab, but you don't have an Airborne tab, so you're called a leg. So then I lost both my legs. I'm legless, but I'm a leg. I'm a Legless Leg Ranger. So there's my Instagram handle.
Sorry, that's a good one.
But
stuff. Listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time, inviting me into your home and everything. It was very nice, and sharing all your experiences.
I really appreciate you taking the time to drive out and to interview people like Donna Zephyrin, and I'm not sure which organization she's backing now. She's been with the Red, White, and Blue, RWB Foundation. She's been with I've run into her at so many different events where we didn't know the other one was showing up at the same event. So like, she'll walk out on a field and like give a speech, and I'm on the sideline like, "Hey,
I know you.
I'm up here. I know. Like, what are you doing here? Just what are you doing here?"
Right.
But she likes interviewing her, and letting me tell my tangential stories. And, hopefully I'll be able to talk to you again at some of these other events that we're doing. I know that you want to speak to a firefighter, and
sure.
My brother-in-law Chris Veazey, firefighter at NYPD, and he also volunteers with doing surf training and teaching kids that have limb loss how to surf. So
very good.
Yeah, like if you talk to him one day, I really appreciate you letting us share our stories.
Thanks again, mate.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.